Welcome to our Baldwin County Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for March 6th. At this time, if you'll stand with me, we'll have a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. Father, we're thankful to you for this day and for the blessings we've each enjoyed in it. We're thankful for this great county we live in. I think we'd all agree here that we're a very fortunate people to live in this place at this time. Now, Father, we just ask that we conduct business here tonight that honors you. I pray that we show respect to each other and honor each right that we have to voice our opinions. And Father, just help us as we make the right decisions tonight. And we pray all this in the name of Jesus. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time I'll call roll. Brandon Bias, Robert Davis, here. Scott Schamberger, Michael Mullet, here. Greg Seibert, here. Jamie Stratager, Glenn Seal, Diane Burnett, here. Michael Fletcher, here. George Waters, here. And Reed Key. All right, we have a quorum. At this time, each of you have received a copy of the minutes from our February 6th work session and the regular meeting. If there are no corrections, I'll entertain a motion that they be approved.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Davis has made a motion that be approved.
Seconded.
Mr. Seibert has made the motion he's seconded the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. All right, Mr. Dixon, you want to have your moment?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have, as we go through every meeting, we have several public hearings today. So I want to quickly go over our public hearing guidelines. So public comments should be made only during the public hearing portion of the meeting. When you come up to the podium to speak, state your name and address in the microphone. Make sure you speak clearly because it is recorded on audio and sometimes it's difficult to pick everything up. Comments should be directed to the Planning Commission Chairman and he can disseminate those comments out to the appropriate people. Comments should be focused on the application being presented and comments from individuals are limited to 3 minutes. And groups who are speaking on, individuals who are speaking on behalf of a group, just please let the chairman know and your time will be 5 minutes. For the rezoning cases, there are 11 criteria that rezonings must be reviewed by. Number one, is it compatible with the development pattern of the area? Number two, has there been any changes in the conditions since originally zoned? Number three, does the proposal conform to the master plan? Number four, does it conflict with public improvements? Number five, does it have any adverse effects to traffic? Number six, is it consistent with the development pattern of the area? Number seven, is it a logical expansion of adjacent zoning? Number eight, is the timing appropriate given the development trends? Number nine, is it any impacts to environmental or historic resources? And number 10, adverse impacts on the health, safety, and wellness of the county or vicinity, and then any other matter that may be appropriate to the time. So you'll see those reviewed during our presentations, how the applications either conform to or do not conform to those requirements. On the subdivision cases, the state law is very clear. If the application meets all of our subdivision regulations, that the Planning Commission has no discretion but to approve the subdivision. So I know we'll hear a lot of public comments about different things with subdivisions, but look at our staff report and we kind of give you a good outline of how it does or does not meet our regulations and give you a recommendation on that. But that's all I have for our opening. So
Okay,
Glad to
thank you,
answer any
sir.
questions.
In addition to that, let me just be sure that everybody understands, I will open each of our agenda items and state that it's a public hearing. If you signed up, your name will show up on my notepad here, and I'll call on you at the appropriate time to come up and speak. You'll come to this podium and address the Planning Commission, and we'll give you your 3 minutes to speak. Once we go through, everybody just has their opportunity to speak. We'll have a conversation between us and our staff. I will close the public hearing, and when I do so, the public hearing is closed, and then inevitably somebody will raise their hand every time I do this and ask, can I speak? And it always makes me look like the bad guy. I'm going to go ahead and tell you now, I'm not going to let you speak, okay? So speak when you have the opportunity to come up, but don't ask to speak after that, because I will close the public hearing and it is done at that point. Okay, I'm going to change our order just briefly because we have a request to withdraw an item, and because that request came in late, that means we have to address the withdrawal and approve it as a motion here, so they don't have to sit here and wait for that item to come up. I'm going to go ahead and take that item now, and so this is case number SRP 25. Wait a minute, I got the wrong one. Oh, here it is. Z25-04, the Goodwin property. So the applicant has made a request to withdraw this item, so I'll ask the Planning Commission, what's your pleasure on that item?
I make a motion we approve the request to withdraw the,
I'll second it.
All right, Mr. Davis made a motion that we withdraw the item. Michael Mullick has seconded the motion. Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that item has been withdrawn. All right, now we're going to go back to the beginning of our agenda, and these first 3 items, just so the public understands, is what we call our consent agenda. We will, we've already talked about these in work session, and as long as no one has an issue in the public, we will vote on these all at one time. But I'm going to give you the opportunity, in case you're here tonight, to speak on one of these. I'll pull it off the consent, and then we'll give you the opportunity to do that. But not right now. All I need is a show of hands. The first one is not a public hearing, so the next one is the SPP 25-02. This is the BFLC Styx River East Phase 3. Anybody here opposed to that item? Is the applicant here? Oh, he is. I just want to make sure we're going along with staff recommendation. And if there's part of that recommendation you want to talk to us about, you need to say now, and I'll pull it off the agenda. Yeah, I would like to speak on that. Okay, so I'm going to pull it off the agenda then. And the last one for the consent agenda is SV 25-03, the Cody Conner subdivision variance. Anybody here opposed to that item? All right, that stays on the consent agenda. All right, let's go ahead and deal with these 2 items then. So I'm going to open the well, first one is not a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing for SV 25-03, the Cody Conner subdivision variance. And I'm going to close the public hearing. And now I'm going to ask that the consent agenda for these 2 cases, PER 25-04 Club RV Park Extension and SV 25-03 Cody Conner subdivision variance. I'm asking for what you want to do on those 2 items on our consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve those 2 agenda items.
Okay?
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Seibert has made a motion that the consent agenda be approved, which are those 2 items I mentioned. George Waters has seconded the motion. Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those 2 items are approved. All right, now we're going to go back to and open the public hearing for case number SPP 25-02. This is the BFLC Styx River East Phase 3. Ms. Mitchell, you can be as brief as you need to be on this. I think we understand, but I definitely want to give the applicant the opportunity to
All right.
speak, but go ahead and set us up for it.
Okay, so this is a 9-lot subdivision off of Lenholm Road and Goat Cooper, and I'll go to the slides that might be what the objection is based on. So staff has asked the applicant to show an existing dirt road continuing through Lot 9. So this is the way it looks right now. They have it drawn with a 60-foot right-of-way, and we're just asking that they continue the road, but we are not asking that they show the 60-foot right-of-way. That can end, it only has extended as far as you need to for lot width requirements. So we're just asking that the rest be shown just as a line, just to show that the road continues, just to memorialize access to the parcel to the south. Just to go to the conditions of approval, they do have to install a turn lane on County Road 64, ask that they show the dirt road, and then we've, the permit engineer has asked for site distance at a couple of locations. So that's it.
Any questions? Any questions for staff? Okay, if you will, come up and give us your name and
Hey, I'm Trent Wilson with Wygan Wilson, and actually, I think there's a misunderstanding because I was under the impression that we were still needing to show the entire 60-foot easement through there, which makes that lot very difficult to use. But if it's just a matter of showing a line, we don't have an objection just to showing a line on a map of where a road is.
okay? Is that what you're asking for?
Yes.
Okay. And you're fine with it? It's all right. I had no one else signed up, right? All right. I'm going to close the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion we approve with the conditions set forth by staff.
All right. Mr. Davis made a motion to approve with staff conditions. Have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Mullick has seconded the motion. Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, our next item is not a public hearing. This is SRP 25-03, the Emerald Coast RV Park.
All right, Commissioners. As you said, this is case SRP 2503 Emerald Coast RV Park. This is a request for a revised site plan approval. The property is located south of Brewer Road, west of County Road 65, and North Dairy Road. It is in the City of Foley's planning jurisdiction, but the city did not review RV Park at the time when this was approved. I'm going to kind of skip through the basics here. Here's your planning district map. Here is your locator map, your vicinity map with the location. The blue is the city limits of Foley, and this is in an unzoned district. This is a copy of the originally approved site plan for the RV park that was approved by you guys in October 5th in 2023. And then here is the revised site plan and subdivision, 3-lot subdivision that's been approved by the City of Foley. As you can see, the property owner has gone to the city because since this is now within their municipal jurisdiction, they have exclusive review of subdivisions, and they split the 40-acre parcel into these 3-acre parcels. 3-lot subdivisions. The RV park is remaining as Lot 2 with the 22 acres, and then they created Lot 1, which is approximately 3.5 acres, and Lot 3 is 8 acres. As I mentioned, this has already been approved by City of Foley. And because they have done the subdivision and relocated a couple of drainage structures, this falls within the major changes of our regulations, and that's why we're here today, so that you can take action on these changes. Here I have the original conditions from the PUD and the revised conditions for the revised site plan. Staff is recommending approval. The applicant will be required to record the revised site plan within 90 days from approval of the CPR, which was done in April, which will what needs to be recorded by April 20th. I believe they received approval in January. And the 2-year site plan approval is coming up on October 6th, so most likely the applicant will require permit extensions to continue this project. So they will need to submit that extension somewhere between August, September, in order for you all to see it again in October. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for staff?
I have a question. I was looking at the original specifications. Was County Road 65 required to be widened? know?
Just at the entrance.
Just at the entrance?
Yes, yes.
And did they add a new dumpster?
That's a
know?
good question. I'm not sure. I would have to look into the construction plans application to make sure that they have met that condition.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Fabia, since the city of Foley has already approved that, I guess it's safe to assume that even with the relocation of the drainage still fits all the specifications that were required, fits their drainage narrative.
The plat, as I understand, that was provided to the city of Foley reflected the project that you see it now with the relocated drainage structure. So I believe what they have approved and what we're looking over is the correct.
Thank you.
I have a question. Ms. Burnett asked, are dumpster locations? I don't see any on this plat that I'm looking at, just for trash collection.
It looks like there's one where the,
So the original
where that
one.
ingress comes out, that curve that goes, yeah.
I see it right there in the
Okay.
curve. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, this was not a public hearing, but I'll entertain a motion. Nobody has any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we approve, subject to the one staff condition.
All right, Mr. Cybers made a motion to approve subject to staff conditions. Have a second?
Second.
Mr. Fletcher has seconded the motion. Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our next item, we're going to open the public hearing for case number PRD 25-01. This is the Cambridge subdivision. Does anybody need to declare prior communication on this item? Okay, Ms. Rhodes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is PRD 2501, the Cambridge subdivision. The request is a 377-site planned residential development. Here is the location of the subject properties within the county. The properties are located within Planning District 12. They're located at the intersection of County Road 54 and County Road 55 in the Robertsdale area. As mentioned earlier, the proposed number of lots will be 377. The density is 3.49 lots per acre. This will be a composite density of RA and RSF3 zoning. Here's some agency comments as well as some of the property images. Our subject property is located here, and then we have the adjacent property images. In terms of staff analysis and findings, the requested PRD will have an underlying composite zoning of 3.49 units per acre. This is less than the requirements for RSF3, which is 4.356 units per acre. We can look at the intersection of County Road 54 and County Road 55 as an activity node, a community node, which allows greater density at that area. And as you move further away from that node, the density gets greater. So they're proposing 4 phases for this particular development, and you can see the lot sizes listed there. And I also have the lot sizes listed in a future slide. Here's a locator map and the site map. The adjacent zonings include Rural Agricultural District. We see B3, General Business District, as well as RSF3. And the adjacent land uses include residential, agricultural, and commercial. Here is the sketch plan and the site data table. In the site plan, I do have a table listed here showing the lot sizes and the quantity of each of those lots. Here's our future land use map for the area. The proposed PRD variations from zoning, including lot area and lot width. They provided 2 wetland delineations. This is the first wetland delineation from Wetland Sciences, and then the second wetland delineation from Thompson Engineering. They did provide their core permit. This was not in the staff report that was given to you earlier, but they did provide their core permit. So they have that here, as well as the information from that permit. Here's their landscaping plan. And finally, their proposed amenities, which include a multi-purpose sports field, walking trails, a playground, pickleball courts, and kayak launches and a fishing pier. Staff's recommendation of this request is approval with the conditions outlined on the screen. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions for staff? Okay. Mr. Smith, you want to come on up?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Dwayne Smith, Anchor Engineering. One thing I want to point out real quick, I see an error on the density calculation on the plan, and actually it's been repeated. It's actually 2.49 units per acre, not 3.49. Obviously I listened to the work session and everything. There's a lot of concern about lot size and density and everything. We worked with staff quite a bit since the first time this went through to kind of lay out what we did, and we tried to work from the node at 54 and 55 with the commercial space, working density out. We have the larger lots in the rear closer to the farmland that's in that area. And basically density works from the node back out to the more rural areas. There was a comment or a question brought up during work session regarding entrances for the R3 land currently. We have the ability to do 2 entrances off 54 on the R3 land if we were to develop that just a straight R3. If we were to do that, the density would go up from the 2.49 to something over 3 in developing that. With regard to drainage, we're currently doing a lot of things that are unnecessary per the subregs to improve the drainage in this area. I know that there's a lot of discussion out about flooding that has occurred in this area, everything. We're doing a lot of things on the site in our current drainage plan to improve the drainage, help minimize the risk of potential flooding in the future. I don't know that you can ever say you prevent the risk of flooding. But this will, once built, would operate from a drainage standpoint much better than this land does in its current condition. As staff mentioned, we have been through the core. The wetlands is defined with agreements on the core. We've got our permits in order to do what you see on the page. So wetlands is not a question or issue. It's been well-defined working with the Corps. Questions?
Dwayne, how many phases are we looking at?
It's currently planned for 4 phases.
The first phase being closest to the intersection of 55 and 54.
The first phase, yes, it would start, it would pick up the 2 entrances and would be basically south going north. It would have some of the purple lots, the smaller lots, and some of the yellow lots, the medium-sized lots. We quickly try to work back. Each phase, we try to get some of all lot sizes in when possible, because that provides the best markability for a builder.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so this is currently zoned R3, the whole thing?
No, sir, it's, the middle 93 acres is R3. There's a roughly 39, 40 acre piece over by 54 and 55 that's RA currently. And then there's a 20-something acre piece, as Corey's now showing, over on the east side that's RA currently.
Okay.
That piece at 54 and 55 is going to develop one day, whether it's now or in the future. It's a major intersection. It's got to happen.
I'm not familiar with that. Is that business area, is that developed now? Or is
It's
this
not
just?
currently.
Okay.
I
Go
do
ahead.
have a question. On the plat map, will you show it again? Corey, please. The purple, they're 50-foot wide lots, correct?
That's currently, yes.
They don't appear to be all the same size. Is that just because it's an illustration? Do you
No,
s-
there's another plan in there that gives actual dimensions of all the lots. I mean, anytime you're laying out a subdivision, not every lot is going to be the exact same size, even
Right.
within a size,
So
specific size.
how many lots are really 50 feet wide? Really?
I don't know off the top of my head, there's no way to know. I mean, some may be 50, some may be 53, some may be 56, or whatever. It's kind of how it fits on the plan.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I've voiced my concern in work session that it's the size of the lots that is the trouble. For me, I mean, you know, the 80-foot lots are minimums on RSF3 and on to lesser density. And I mean, you know, this room that we're sitting in here is 50-foot wide, and I think that's where, I mean, less of the 50-foot lots, I mean, you know, that's, I think, going to be what most of, that's my trouble with this as a PRD and this layout.
The one consideration would be is if the 50s were increased to 60s, does that change anything?
I mean, instead of 50, 60, and 80, if they were 60, 70, and 80, it would be, you know, it would put a few less houses in here. And I mean, you know, I say when you look at how wide 50 foot is, and I mean, you know, they don't all have to be big, but, you know, a little less dense. And this is an improvement from what we were looking at before. And I said, I think we're on a track to get to where we want to be. And, you know, I think it's going to take one more pass at this to, you know, lessen that dense. If we're going to go through, if I want to support it as a PRD, you know, to, you know, work on reducing that density just a little bit more from where we are here today.
I just want to, my position probably hadn't changed since the last meeting. You're probably not surprised by that. But in fairness to you, I want to be sure I've got the numbers right. That R3 piece, just quick calculations, would allow by right, I need the public to understand this. If this PRD didn't get approved tonight, you have every right to come back on that R3, which I'll go ahead and say it should have never been done, in my opinion. It's in the wrong place, should never be, but that's neither here nor there, it's done. That piece would allow you a little over 400 lots.
That is correct.
And because you've added the other RA parcels, I figure that's about another 19 lots. So it looks like to me, by right, you could do 420-something lots, and you're asking for 377.
Yeah, I think by right, the number ends up being somewhere in the neighborhood. It's in the 430s. It's pretty close to that.
Okay?
And if we, you know, if we can't work something out here and we went, what we would likely do is just develop the R3 piece. And you're probably going to end up with something in the low 300s, just on that 93 acres. So I think we're trying to do, it may not seem like it always, but we're trying to do what we think is best in the long run. There's a lot of green space in what we've laid out here. There's a lot of things we're doing to help this area from a drainage standpoint. We're trying to do it the right way. Like I said, it may not always come across that way, but that's the attempt.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Smith?
So if you were asked to increase the lot width size, the green space would go away?
No. I mean, if we were going to make modifications to this plan, generally speaking, we would be looking to work within the confines you see now. We're not, it may not seem sometimes, but we're not trying to scavenge every piece of available dirt there is there.
I have just a comment, and I've voiced mine on lot widths as we're looking at 50s, 60s, and 80s. You know, if you took this same plan and went with, say, 60, 70, and 80s, I think that would, in my opinion, be better. We might go from 377 houses. I don't think you'd lose more than 25 houses in the whole development, and I think it would just make us a better product.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I don't say if you might be, I mean, if this could be something worth, say, tabling for one, could it be an option to table it for 1 month and let's look and see what, 60, 70, and 80 looks like instead of 50, 60, and 80. I think that might suit us as a group.
I think that's worth, we would like to say that. Obviously, we would like, there's a lot of public here that came to speak. We appreciate the public's feedback. So
Yeah, I think what I do, Dwayne, is let me go through these public and let you come back up in case there are questions that come up that I may need you to answer. Would that be fair?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, there are several of you that have signed up, so I'm going to let you each come up for your 3 minutes. I'm going to start with Donnie Dearborn.
My name is Donnie Dearborn. I live at 23900 Grant Drive. I don't want to keep beating this horse to death. We came in October. You denied it. We went before the county commission in November, and they denied it. The only thing that has changed since then is we've gone from 445 houses to 377. The good Lord didn't come down and make it all dry. It's still wetlands no matter what he says. The roads are still 2-lane. County hadn't gone in there and made 4-lane roads. They have been trying to do something with this property since 2007. And it has been denied every time since 2007. I have a study. I know he says he's got a new wetland study or whatever. This was from July 16th of 2007. It said the minimum water retention pond on this acreage would be a 42-acre lake. That's what it says by this report, which was done by an engineering firm too. I hate to keep talking about this. I was here when your preliminary, Mr. Waters mentioned that it does say that 430 acres flow on this property. That is what this report says. It says you have to have a 42-acre pond. I don't know how much pond space he's going to have. But I will say this. Y'all did good judgment before. You showed wisdom, and you turned down the request for the PRD and their rezoning. And I'm just hoping you will use that same wisdom again. Now, in regards to the small lots, the small houses, I didn't think about this the last time that much because it didn't really come to my mind. But since we were here in October, there was a house fire in Foley. And there was these little 50 acre, these little 50-foot wide lots. 2 other houses had damage because one house caught on fire. No winds, nothing like that. And they have a paid fire department. All of these areas are volunteer. If you had one of these houses catch on fire and we have winds like what we had the other night, you're looking at what happened in California with those gusty winds. And that's basically all I want to say. So I hope you use the same wisdom and judgment that you used the last time to turn this down. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Wayne Kent.
Thank you for hearing us. I have some pictures. Would y'all like to look at them?
This is the back property.
You can pass them out.
Completely covered with water.
Those pictures, if you look at it, you'll see one picture with me standing there, and I'm 5 acres from the property, and you can see the whole property is underwater all the way across. And the study that you were just hearing about, I have the entire drainage study because we were sued over the property for our ditch, so we got this as disclosure.
And complete, if y'all
We have all of it. And it does say a 42-acre lake, a minimum. But it also says our ditch and another ditch, and the ditch being 15 foot wide at the bottom and about 80 foot wide at the top.
110 to 105 foot wide.
Right away. And they wanted both ditches that big to drain the property. And they still couldn't pull it off. So that's about all I had to say about it.
A little history, this property, the Bankston property, was homesteaded by my grandfather, turn of the century. It was known as Hudson's Pond because it was a cypress swamp, is what it was. Back in 2005, 2006, and 7 through 9, that's when the lawsuit was brought against Silver Creek against us for the easement rights to our ditch. And one thing that worries me, if this is developed and they do find out there is drainage issues, will they be able to come on our property and say they have to
Take our property.
Take our property for drainage there possibly. Plus, if this is actually a bowl, you develop this, all this water that was going to here is going to be sitting around it. Is it going to be flooding our property? There's major drainage issues with this, and we hope that y'all stop.
Okay.
The only other thing I have to add is those pictures, the crops are changing, trees that were there are gone. That's over several years. That's not one event. There are
Okay.
many events.
Thank you. Kathy Elgie.
Well, hey guys, it's Kathy LG. I live at 15650 South Boulevard. I know everybody wants to live here. It's a great place. We all know that, right? The problem that I have with any of this, our infrastructure right now is not built to handle the subdivisions that are already going in, much less another 400 houses. I know that it used to take me 20 minutes to go from Silver Hill to Faro. Takes me an hour now, 1 hour to go down 104. We only have 4 4-lane roads in this county, that's it. Okay, we're a farming community and I understand that. Our schools are already packed. There is, teachers have told me that the brand new Silver Hill School with the subdivisions that are currently going in will be overloaded in 3 years. Okay, I know Silver Hill has waited a long darn time to get a school. So do we really want to do this? I don't know. I love Baldwin County, and I know why people want to live here. We're good people. But until the infrastructure is set, I don't see how you can approve any more subdivisions. We have way too many going in right now. They're affecting the way we travel. They're affecting our schools. I mean, I hope that y'all are smart enough. I know a lot of y'all have raised your kids along with mine. And do you want the schools to be overrun? Do you want it to take 3 hours to get down a road because it's 2-lane? I think this might be a good idea, but maybe in 10 to 15 years when we have 4-lane roads in there. Right now, we have just little bitty 2-lane roads, and even at that junction, there's only a stop sign there, a 4-way stop. How are you going to handle another 450 vehicles coming in and out of those 2 roads? So I appreciate your time and what y'all do for our county. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Warren.
Hey, I'm Greg Warren, 15327 County Road 54. I believe, in listening earlier, it sounds like we're getting a development no matter what, based on what y'all said earlier with the R3 property.
Good.
Is that correct?
Good.
Okay. I was listening to Mr. Mullock's proposal. I think that's a good thing to go forward with. I do have concerns. I work for the school system. I don't represent them. But Silver Hill, like Ms. LG said, is already projected to be at max capacity by the end of next school year. They are currently at 60% capacity. I have an office there. I work at that school. The concern for me is our school infrastructure across the county, but specifically where I live here in Silver Hill. And our teachers are leaving in droves because they are overwhelmed. They have, their classroom sizes are increasing to 30 to 35 students in some classrooms. Not all, but some. And if we continue to add more and more houses without the proper infrastructure in place, I believe we're going to see a failure in our school system. I've heard the flooding concerns. I've heard the flooding suggestions. I live there. I live a mile from that 4-way, and it floods a lot. It does sound like some of the irrigation concerns can be addressed. I don't know if you drive there, but I go through that 4-way every morning at 7:15 and every afternoon at 3:55. And there are some times that there are 50 to 60 cars waiting in line at that stop sign to make a turn or go straight, and it can take up to 20 minutes to get through that intersection sometimes. I would be interested to see, are we planning on widening the roads or adding a stoplight to increase traffic flow? And my other major concern is the inadequacy of our emergency response. We had it mentioned earlier that we have volunteer fire departments, but we only have 18 police officers in Robertsdale and only 7 in Silver Hill that manage that area for emergency response. And my concern would be with another 300 homes, who handles those emergencies? That's all I have.
Okay. Terry Whiteside.
Thank y'all for taking our time. And I'm sorry, what I have to share is somewhat of a ditto you've already heard. It's about the infrastructure. Currently within a 5-mile radius of this very spot where you're asking to build these homes here, this property, within a 5-mile radius, there's 6 other developments going in. The newest one going on in is just north of there on County Road 55 at Fackler Road. It's going to be a pretty big one. The other big one's off on County Road 49, just before you get to 104, where the horse farm used to be, a very large one there. And you think about the others in the area as well too, those are very large areas. And so we talk about the infrastructure, and there's 6 basic points or questions which we've already heard. Water drainage. I understand you have a great fix for the water drainage to come in place with this new development, but why don't we implement it today before you put it in, so we can see how it works, and you don't have to go down County Road 54, and Wayne doesn't have to deal with what he has to deal with too. The other thing, with all these extra homes, you're talking about the water table. There used to be a sod farm in there from time to time, and water table's always concerned where the water's going to come from. Traffic 54, 55, just heard an awesome testimony about that, and that is the fact. It's bad, and where it's also bad is coming out by UPS onto County Road 59 there. It's pretty bad there. It's been backed up all the way to the subdivision on the right there. Sewer system. It's not what we want to deal with. You talk about this many homes, this much saturation. A lot of homes that's already there were all on septic tanks. And you heard the good testimony just a minute ago about law enforcement. Right now there's a strain. I can only speak for Robertson. Right now there's a strain on the law enforcement. A lot of the police officers are working 12-hour days, which is a different issue, but we're really strained for law enforcement in Robertstown and Loxley as well too now. Hate to think about what could come in here. The big one that gets me is what Donnie brought up very clearly about what happened in California, what happened in Foley. You talk about the roads coming here, the proximity to these homes. And I don't know how many guys you drive a fire truck, deal with fire trucks, but they're very huge, they're very hard to maneuver. Fire truck's not gonna get through there. So let's just put the lumber in there, burn it all up now before people get affected as well. The last thing in closing, and we've heard Baldwin County is an awesome place. We look at 5 subdivisions coming down, 6 subdivisions coming in right now within a 5-mile radius of this. Let's preserve what we've been blessed with. There's a limit to how much we need and how much we can handle. We're blessed beyond measure right now. Let's hold on to that blessing and not give it away and take it for granted. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Ricky Strickland.
My name's Ricky Strickland. I live at 23956 Grant Drive, which is within about 400 yards right there where the intersection is, where they're going to start building that. I've been there 67 years here in the county, and I've seen the county grow just like all of y'all. I mean, I don't know if all of y'all lived here in the county or your whole life, but I know some of y'all guys and ladies, y'all been here a long time. And if I'm not mistaken, I think right now this county, what I've heard is like the 10th largest or the fastest growing county in the nation, not in the state, but I think it's like in the nation. The road there, where there's only a caution light there now, right there at 55 and 54. My entrance to my road is about 400 yards, I guess, from that intersection. I pulled out to the 54 before, and I've had the traffic we backed up from 54 back past my road, which is like 400 yards, and that's not even a red light, just a caution light. It takes, sometimes take me 10 minutes to get out, just to get on the road. That place has grown so fast. As he just mentioned, we got the 6 subdivisions coming up within 5 miles of where we live now. That's only counting our area. That's not counting Foley, Daphne, Fairhope. And like Fairhope, if I'm not mistaken, their city has shut down the building in their city for a while. And you would think maybe our county could look at, not say shutting it down, but slowing it down, because if we don't, we are outgrowing our infrastructure so fast. As they said, the roads, 2-lane roads, no places to eat. Instead of investing in property, why not put some restaurants or do some things of that nature, or the sewer system? I'm on a septic tank system. I don't even have sewer. I have city water, but I have septic systems. I don't know if these houses are going to be sewer. Is that going to be Robertsdale? Is it going to be tied into the Baldwin County sewer system? I haven't heard that. Maybe he said that. I don't know where all that's going. We talk about environmental. What good is that for environmental? You're dumping 400 houses of sewer into the ground, and some people still have wells. Also, 377 houses on, I think that was 152 acres. That figures up a house on 0.4 acres. And that's not counting a road, that ain't counting a pond, that ain't counting the park he said he was gonna do. I mean, 50 feet? I mean, that's what the lot's gonna be, is 50 feet. I mean, you could even put a hunting camp on that. So I appreciate y'all letting me talk, but I just think, hopefully, that y'all think about this really hard, just for that area and this whole county, not just that area, this whole county. Any type of this stuff that comes up, we really need to look at it really hard. I know people are in this lot for the money, and money can be bad. Maybe we need a Doge in Baldwin County to see what's going on with all of this, because there's a lot of money being made on all this stuff, and I think a lot of this is definitely money driven. Thank y'all, and hope y'all really look into this. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Last is Steve Moore.
I'm Stephen Moore. I live at 23870 County Road 55. My wife, Rubina. Our land is, the backside is where the development is going to be taking place. We're on 55, but they're on our east side of us. First of all, I'll just mirror everything that was said. I agree with the traffic issues that everybody has said. And I'll throw into that, for RSF4, they'll be using the Rawls Road, and that leads right to a school right there.
Middle school.
And that backs up in the morning and the afternoon is another issue to consider. And also on traffic, 55 connects 59 and 104. And people use that to bypass 59, so they don't have to go through towns and stuff. Also is a route to Foley for back roads. So there's a lot of traffic on that road, and we have to wait to get to our mail because the post office requires us to put it on the other side. So it's getting dangerous for us to get our mail. But for me, the real thing I'm up here for is because it is on the east side of our property. That side of our property is wetland woods. It's a wooded wetland area. And there's often water standing in there. That doesn't take even when there's not rain, there's water out there. When it rains, we have a decent sized pond, and water will come from about a couple times a year will come from the woods all the way into our pond, level up to the pond. And my concern with any development around there is how is that going to affect us? Is it going to flood more? Is it going to start flooding onto parts of our property where, so it starts messing up parts where we're actually living in. And it's also going to be adjacent to an area that's currently like an old field that eventually our son and daughter might want to build homes there. And if it's flooding worse than it already is out there, I don't know. And then finally, kind of not really opposed to housing out there, and the thought of smaller properties might make it cheaper for people. But I'm wondering on flooding property, if you have houses that close together, even if they put ponds and stuff out there, is the water going to be allowed to drain? I asked that ignorantly, I don't know. Anything else? That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. All right. That's all I had signed up to speak. Mr. Smith, did you want to come back up and address anything you heard? I'll give you that opportunity.
It seemed like the major comments were on drainage and water and then traffic. With regard to the acreage outside of the property that flows through the property, we analyzed that as part of our drainage study. It's very common to have off-site drainage flow through a subdivision or any other development you're doing. You have to design for it, so that, and we would. We've done preliminary drainage studies much further along than what you typically do for PRD because of the site and the past water issues. So we feel comfortable where we're at on that. With regard to traffic, I've had a lot of conversations with staff on methods to help alleviate traffic issues at that intersection. It's going to take work from both sides because the real solutions are things that we can't do by ourselves. It's having to work with these county staff and trying to develop solutions. But there are solutions out there to help solve the traffic, and those would be worked out finally as you go from this step to more of the actual subdivision plan phase. That's all I have.
Okay. Does anybody, Planning Commission, have any questions for Mr. Smith?
I have a question. And this may come in the next step of the process, but were there any road improvements associated with this? I know if one day we got a stoplight there at that four-way intersection would maybe be better than the four-way stop, or any of the road widening requirements at these entrances,
Currently,
that have been brought forward?
My apologies, I didn't mean to cut you off. The traffic study doesn't currently show any widening. However, what staff and I have spoke about, and we think the real solution to that intersection is a roundabout. It will make that traffic flow much better than a light, a stoplight, whatever. It will allow flow to continue. But in order to do that, it's going to be getting right away from other potential people on that corner. So that's why the county would have to be involved to work together to come up with that solution.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I mean, you know, it ties a little bit with traffic, it ties some with drainage, it ties some with our concerns with, you know, and it goes back down to this density, and we, you know, would you be amicable to, you know, let's say us tabling this for, let's 30 or 60 days, however long that you would desire that look at these, let's say if we looked at these, making these 67, moving these 50s to 60s and these 60 to 70s.
It's something that we would like to consider, or we would ask that, you know, do a 30-day table. We can do some quick plans and be able to make some decisions pretty fast. I guess from a staff standpoint, is that enough time?
Yeah, that would be enough time for us to review it. I mean, that gives you enough time to redraw it, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I like what I see better than what we saw before, and like I said, I think we make a few minor adjustments, some adjustments to this, and we'll get to a spot that satisfies us better.
I have just one question, and it might be for staff. With the improvement of the traffic flow with a potential roundabout, is that something that we would have to wait until after the development is finished, or will it run concurrent with the development of the subdivision?
So, you know, the PRD is a zoning case, right? So all the localized traffic improvements come at the subdivision phase, which is the next phase. So we would have to review the traffic study, look at the scope, look at what intersections they studied, what their growth rates were, and basically approve the traffic study and whatever recommendations for local improvements would be needed. And it's hard to say without, you know, until that next step, you know, what all those improvements will be. But I think in this location, it's pretty clear that intersection needs some work. There's a lot of different ways that can be addressed. I would expect there to be some local improvements at the entrances to the subdivision off of 55 and 54. But all that's determined during the subdivision process when we have a approved traffic study.
So there could be a timeline created as to say when A happens, B is going to start?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't answer your second part of your question. But so when those traffic studies are approved on multi-phase projects like this, it gives criteria of like when you hit phase 2, you have to do X, Y, and Z. So it would be it's a part of the approval of the development that they have to be installed.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith? Okay. None? Thank you, sir. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing, allow us time to deliberate and discuss. So, yes, ma'am.
I have a question for staff.
Okay.
What is the interior width of the pavement of this development?
Well, in the staff report, our permit engineer who's out today, but this would require, everything in here is less than 80 feet or less, so it would have the alternative street section that's in our subdivision regulations, which is that wider street bit.
Jay, this came in under the old regs, the PRD did?
But it was a condition of the, it was a condition of the permit engineer in there.
Okay. And then I have 3 questions. The second question is, does this fall within the new PRD regulations?
No. So
I didn't think so.
This is under the current.
All right. And then the other question is about the school board. And in our other agendas, we had a list of agencies that were notified and their comments back. You still do that? Yes?
So our process is we send every subdivision or rezoning to the school board. And they most of the time they don't provide comment because what they do is they take that information and put it into their capital planning purposes.
All right. But so they have not responded to this?
If they respond, we would put it in there. But when they don't respond, we just don't put anything.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, for the sake of the public, one more time, I'm going to say this so that everybody understands. Even if this were to get turned down, the applicant and the developer could come back with that R3 portion of the property, design it, and probably get close to 400 lots, which is more than the 377 they're asking, as long as they can meet the drainage requirements approved by the county and traffic by the county, then we as a planning commission cannot do anything. It would have to be approved because we're bound by the regulations that if they meet the requirements of the zoning, they meet drainage and they meet traffic, we have to approve it. So I'm just telling you that just to understand. They're asking for 377 lots tonight. I'm not sure they can get as many lots on that 93 acres with the drainage requirements that are there. So I'm not sure they could get the 400 lots. There are things that I don't like about this, and I'll just say it for the record, that PRDs to me never were intended to look like this. Jay and I have talked about this many times because we've worked in that side of the field. To me, this looks like a subdivision. It doesn't look any different than a subdivision. It's just a sprawl out development. It's a subdivision. Typically in PRDs, the way they originally were intended were to group lots into smaller areas, less infrastructure. If you look at this, the roadways go throughout this entire development. There's probably more roadways here than if they could do it the way that originally a PRD was planned to be done. So the infrastructure is not any less, it's probably more. So I say that because I have yet to see someone come in here with a true PRD. Nothing against Mr. Smith because his PRD looks just about like every other PRD that I've seen come in here. But I'm now on this side of it. I know what it should be, but we rarely get one like it. So I'm kind of torn as to, I don't like it, but at the same time, it could be worse. So that's my 2 cents. Anybody else?
I appreciate Mr. Mullick's idea to table this, to reconfigure it to, 60s, 70s, and 80s, or 60s and 80s, for that matter. But I have to agree with Steve that even if you reconfigure this to 60s, 70s, and 80s, or 60s and 80s, or whatever, the overall density, I teach social studies for a living, not math, but I think you're still going to be in the vicinity of 300 houses. You're not making it any better. Steve's right, they could by right at R3 put 400 houses on those 93 acres, and then you have no green space except the RA that abuts it on either side. But this is not what the PRD was intended to be.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Can we approve this with the conditions of increasing those 2 lot sizes to 60 and 70?
No, you need to table.
You got to see it?
Yeah, table and ask them to come back.
So our options are we either vote it down or we're making a recommendation to the county commissioner. So you're either making a recommendation to deny the request or to approve it, or we can make the recommendation to table it, which I think Mr. Smith was somewhat agreeable to. I think, Mr. Smith, I would be right in saying if there was a move here to deny it, you'd prefer that it be tabled and give you the chance to rework it a little bit than a straight out denial. Is that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but yeah, you can come up. And I don't know which way it's going, so don't take my statement as a matter of, because I don't know how everybody would vote. I'm just saying.
I guess if there was some sort of agreement that going to 60s, 70s, and 80s would create a positive solution, then I would say table it makes sense. If we're going to go to 60s, 70s, and 80s, just to turn around and get denied again,
and be right back where we are. Not fair enough. Thank you. Yeah, I can appreciate what Mr. Smith is saying. So let's don't table this and put him through a delay and more design. Only if your mind's made up, you're not going to like it when he comes back. So
I think that we're looking at a development that's coming here and just, you know, I think giving them the right time to come back with a better ideas, you know, is an effort in us coming to a solution on it. I mean, instead of 30 days, I mean, we maybe 60, maybe our meeting 2 months from today would be a more appropriate time to get, I'm gonna say, these, you know, things worked out for them.
Okay. Anybody else? If not, I'm going to entertain a motion.
I like the compromise too, so I'm going to make a motion that we table this case for 60 days, or not the next meeting, but the meeting after that.
And I'll second it.
Okay. So Mr. Davis has made a motion that we table it for 60 to the, not the next meeting, but the following meeting, to the May meeting. Does that work for you? Okay. All right, so the motion been made by Mr. Davis, was seconded by Mr. Mullick, is that right?
Yes.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Motion carries. Okay, we're going to open the public hearing now for case number Z25-01. This is the Southern Storage Solutions LLC property. Does anybody need to declare prior communication on this item? Ms. Boykin?
All right, this is a request for rezoning from rural agricultural to RSF2, which is single family. The property is located on the east side of State Highway 181 and south of County Road 32 in Planning District 39. It is currently zoned RA, and the applicant is asking RSF2, residential single family. It consists of 34.59 acres, and the rezoning is requested just for future residential development. Here you can see the subject property is surrounded by some RA zoning and also some BCZ zoning, which is base community zoning. The uses in the area are business, agricultural, and residential. Here is the future land use map. It is located near a neighborhood center. And staff has recommended approval of the rezoning from RA to RSF2.
Okay, any questions for staff? Okay, I had one sign up, Max Dane. Do you want to speak? Max? No Max. Okay. Are you the applicant?
Yes.
Come on up. Give us your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Jay Broughton with Broughton Associates. We're the engineer of records for this project. Appreciate y'all's time and consideration on this. As y'all know and read in the staff report, it is about 9/10 of a mile south of 32. There's several residential neighborhoods within the immediate vicinity of the project, in addition to several other properties that have just been upzoned to higher density. So it is matching the logical progression of development in the area. And I'd be happy to answer any questions y'all have.
Okay, any questions? Thank you, sir. All right, I didn't have anybody else signed up, so I'm going to close the public hearing. If you have any questions or comments, or if you don't have any questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to recommend approval.
Mr. Mullick's made a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
This is a recommendation, by the way, to the county commission. Is that Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Mr. Fletcher, second the motion. Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, this time we'll open the public hearing for case number Z25-03, the Resner property. Does anybody need to declare prior communication on this item? Ms. Boykin?
All right, this is also a rezoning request from RSFE, residential estate, single-family estate to B2, which is commercial. Here you can see the subject property is located in 39 on the west side of State Highway 181 between Mosley Road and Gopher Road Extension. The property consists of about 3 acres. It is currently used as residential, and the applicant is requesting commercial zoning for future development. Here on the locator map, you can see there is B2 zoning to the north and south of the subject property. There's also some RSFE to the west and across the road of 181 to the east. Most of this area right here is commercial. There are a little bit of residential. As stated, the subject property, is in Planning District 37, which was recently adopted, their zoning map in 2022. There hadn't been too many changes in the area, and as you can see on the future land use map, is located between a village center and also a urban mixed-use center. Staff has recommended approval of the rezoning request from RSFE to B2.
Any questions for staff? Okay, I only have Mr. Resner signed up to speak. Would you like to speak?
Good afternoon. I'm Rudolph Resner. Excuse me. I'm at 211 State Highway 181. Just an interesting fact, I was young enough at one time to see grass growing in the ruts of Highway 181. But now my time's gone, so you can see I'm surrounded by red on 3 sides, and we need to make some money out of the traffic that comes by. So we need commercial zoning, and appreciate the work the staff has done and the help they've given me as now that you're going paperless, my eyes produce fat fingers, can't see as well, and I miss keyboard. So I hope we can get this rezoned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's all I had signed up to speak. I'll close the public hearing. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval.
All right, Mr. Mullet's made a motion that we recommend this be approved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Burnett has seconded the motion. Any questions or comments on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is case number, I'll open the public hearing for case number Z25-05, the Warner property. Does anybody need to declare prior communication on this item?
All right, this is ZVA 2505, the Warner property, and they are requesting to rezone the property from RSF1 to RSF2. It's located in Planning District 33 on the west side of Liberty Street and the south of Wydell Avenue. It's about 1.7 acres and is currently vacant, but they are wanting to rezone it for a residential development. Here's the locator and site maps. It's surrounded by a few commercial uses and residential, and zoned the same way. This area has been pretty much the same since the zoning map was adopted in 2002, but the proposed amendment appears to be a logical expansion of the surrounding properties, and this property is within one of the neighborhood centers of the future land use map. So staff is recommending that this rezoning request should be approved.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Okay. Mr. Warner, did you want to speak? Okay. He's the only one I had signed up to speak, so I'll close the public hearing. Nobody has any questions, entertain a motion.
Motion that we approve.
Mr. Fletcher has made a motion that we recommend approval of the county commission.
Recommend, yes.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Mr. Mullick has seconded the motion. Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're down to our last item. I'll open, this is a public hearing, is it not?
It is a public hearing.
This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing then for case number TA 25-01. This is the amendments to the Baldwin County zoning ordinance.
So, Mr. Chairman, we have two different presentations. I'd say if it's okay with you, let's go through the map amendment first. It's a little shorter.
Okay.
And so, Selena, you want to do that?
Skip one? That's what she's getting ready to talk about. It's together. It's all part of the same.
All right, this is a map amendment, which is part of the text amendment TA 2501. The subject property is located in Planning District 37 on the northeast corner of State Highway 104 and St. Michael's Way. It is currently zoned BCZ, which is base community zoning, and the requested zoning is RSF2, single family. The subject property consists of 31.7 acres, and it is currently vacant. Here you can see the property is surrounded by BCZ zoning and also RA, rural agricultural, and most of the uses in this area is agricultural and residential. You can see on the future land use map that the subject property is just located east of an urban mixed-use center with some mid-density development potential in the area. Staff has recommended approval of this text map amendment from BCZ to RSF2.
Okay, so that's the only map amendment we have as part of the, and it's all one motion together. We don't have to do separate actions on this.
So let me ask a question. Was a sign posted on this property for this?
Yes.
As though it's a rezoning?
It is posted just like any other rezoning.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, so it goes through that same process. It's just incorporated into our overall text amendment.
Okay.
Also, the certified letters went out to adjacent property also. Okay. So the text amendment portion, and I want to give a little bit of a, much like we did with our subdivision regulation amendment, I want to give a little bit of a opening statement about the county's strategic priorities, strategic plan, and how, what our regulations do fit into that. So obviously, the planning and zoning department, the areas we really work in is growth and infrastructure balance and protecting the natural environment. And both of those do feed into the economic prosperity and workforce portion of our strategic plan. So everything we do when we work on our regulations and our master plan, those are the areas that we're really focusing on inside of the county's master plan. I'm sorry, the county strategic plan. There are 6 areas that we really focused on with the zoning ordinance amendment. First was a very kind of broad, just general definition update. We had a couple of definitions to clarify some things and some general text clarification, which we'll go through in a moment. We had some amendments to a couple of the local provisions. We also had some revisions to 3 of the zoning districts, RA, BCZ, and RSF3. As we've talked about a lot tonight with the PRD that was on this agenda, we did a pretty significant overhaul of the PRD, plan development requirements, to just make it a little bit more clear and align with the goals of the county and where we sit with our growth trends. We also had some updates to the Wetland and Stream Overlay District, and the sixth item was the zoning map amendment, which Selena just went over. So the definitions we addressed, and you'll see in a moment how these are really relevant to other sections of the ordinance. But we clarified the definition of agriculture and agricultural uses. So what we did is just aligned our definition of agricultural use is the use of land for agricultural purposes as defined in the Code of Federal Regulations 33 CFR 323.4. So that's the definition that all of the permitting agencies at the federal and state level use. So we wanted to align with that same definition. That includes farming, dairying, pasturing, agriculture, horticulture, floriculture, viticulture, and animal and poultry husbandry, and any related accessory uses. One thing that was not defined previously that we needed to define was an agriculture building, because those are kind of unique. We're talking about barns, grain silos, things like that are structures, but they're not typical things we see anywhere but agricultural uses. So that definition has been defined as a structure on agricultural land designed, constructed, and used to house farm implements, livestock, or agricultural produce or products used by the owner, lessee, sublessee, or their immediate families, their employees, and persons engaged in the pickup and delivery of agricultural produce and products grown or raised on the premises. And we clarified the term agricultural building does not include dwellings. So, a home or any kind of occupied dwelling is not an agricultural building. They may be on an agricultural piece of property, but that's not an agricultural building. The third one we addressed was, this is really kind of specific to Plan District 25. We had to define what a coastal interductal swell was. It's the only area in the county where we have those. And it's going to come into play when we talk about the overlay district here in a moment. I'm sorry, the local provisions here in a moment. But we defined it as a mix of grasslands, small ponds, or marshes occurring as depressions between successive dune ridges. The water table is strongly tied to local rainfall. Wetness can vary from flooded to completely dry depending on rainfall. Swells are considered isolated due to the lack of hydraulic surface connection to the traditional navigable water and fall outside of the Section 4 for the Clean Water Act. So that's what I was mentioning to you guys during the work session. These are not jurisdictional by the Corps of Engineers, but ADEM does regulate them as part of their coastal program. So they're kind of a unique situation that Fort Morgan has. The next structure, we actually this align structure and permanent structure with the same definition we have in the subdivision regulations. There was a little bit of confusion about how we define a structure in the past, so those two definitions are just the same thing we recently adopted in the subdivision regulations. Same thing with the wetland or stream delineation. We're clarifying that a wetland or stream delineation shall be approved by a wetland delineator and approved by the USACE. So the Corps of Engineers are who has the authority to determine what is jurisdictional and what is not jurisdictional. And we have different ways of working through our regulations to give some paths forward if the Corps doesn't need to be involved. But officially, everything falls back to the Corps of Engineers when it comes to what is or is not jurisdictional wetlands. So some of the general text clarification, we can go through these kind of quickly. Section 12.8, the highway construction setbacks. If you recall, we updated the subdivision regulations to match what the state law said. We had some conflicting language previously that had some additional restrictions beyond what the state law said, so we are now just matching the zoning ordinance to what was recently adopted in the subdivision regulations. Section 13.1, accessory uses and structures. The first one was really just kind of putting in the code how we've been operating as far as agricultural uses and those standards when they're occurring within RSF 1 and RSF 2 districts. And just so y'all know, the practice is that if an RSF 1 or RSF 2 zone property meets the size requirements of RA, they can operate under those agricultural conditions under RA standards. But we do have some additional setbacks. If they're building a barn or whatever, they need to be 100 feet off the right. They need to give some room that would normally not be allowed, required in RSF 1 or RSF 2 district. We updated, this is in all zoning districts, updated accessory dwelling in residential districts. Currently the accessory dwelling has to be no more than 60% of the gross floor area of the primary structure. That's caused a lot of issues in a lot of areas. So we're removing that 60% requirement and saying that the accessory dwelling just shall not exceed the gross floor area of the primary structure. Now, there are a couple of local planning districts, local provisions that have that requirement in there, and they were left in those planning districts because those districts may have had a very good reason why they wanted that ratio in that planning district, but it's not something that should be applied across the whole county. So there are a couple of local provisions that still require that. Parking schedule in section 15.2. We've talked about this pretty much every planning commission meeting, what our parking requirements are. So we have to, currently for multifamily dwellings, it's just a flat 1.6 spaces per unit. That's kind of outdated. Common planning practices have a sliding scale based on the number of bedrooms. And so we're going to that method now, saying 2 bedrooms or less is 1.6 spaces per unit, 3 spaces per unit for 3 to 4 bedrooms, and 3.5 spaces per unit for over 4 bedrooms. And that's for any multifamily development. That does not include single family, and duplex lots are still 2 spaces per unit that's currently required. Article 17 was updated primarily just to add in the same open space calculation requirements from the subdivision regulations. Again, what we were, and we knew this going through the subdivision regulations, that we had a discrepancy between what the subdivision regulations required and what the zoning ordinance required. So this is just kind of correcting that and having the same open space requirements and definitions in both documents. Section 18.10.6, which is commission site plan approval. Steve, I know you've brought this up to me multiple times, that we've got this review criteria for commission site plans that says the proposed use shall not unduly decrease the value of neighboring property. Well, there's really no way we can ever properly evaluate that. So without doing appraisals before and after, and it's just really kind of something that doesn't need to be in there. So we're removing that. Article 21 enforcement section, we updated it just like we did with the subdivision regulations to clarify that violations begin once confirmed by staff. It's currently worded where it could be interpreted that a violation begins when a complaint comes in. Well, that's not when it begins. It begins when we get a complaint, we go out and evaluate it and verify that there is actually a violation there. And the reason that's important is that because there's time periods that come in play once that violation has been confirmed. So moving on to local provisions. In Plan District 25, the off-street parking requirement has been updated to allow tandem stack parking for single-family and two-family dwellings. So this is only for single-family duplexes. As I described in the work session, across the county, we don't allow stacked parking, like one behind another. But in Fort Morgan, they've got a very unique situation that they're predominantly tourism-based, and they also have a lot of environmental constraints that limits the amount of site impact they can have. So the way it's currently written, we're requiring a lot more site impacts, kind of unnecessary, because all these houses are elevated. You can easily stack 2 cars, tandem underneath the house to meet your parking requirement, and we would want to encourage that to limit the amount of impacts to site. Dune walkover requirements were updated, and the primary reason for this is to align the zoning ordinance requirements of this local provisions to align them with the standards of ADEM and the Fish and Wildlife Service. Right now, what's going on is it's creating a lot of variances to the Board of Adjustments because Fish and Wildlife and ADEM require or allow one thing, and their permits allow one thing, and our ordinance doesn't allow that. So it's creating this discrepancy that's just generating a lot of variances. So we've cleaned that up to align with those. So some of the additional limiting factors beyond what Fish and Wildlife and ADEM have that we did keep in there is the elevation of the dune walkover must begin within 36 inches of the finished grade of the residential lot and must be accessible from ground level. So that means a dune walkover can't go elevated up to the upper deck and connect to the deck. It has to stay kind of at ground level and be accessible from ground level, but it can attach to the stairs, but not the structure itself. So that's the next one. Dune walkovers cannot directly connect to the structure or of the home or elevated deck. but they would be allowed to connect to the stairs as long as they're accessible from ground level. For private lots that do not extend seaward of the vegetative line, the applicant shall coordinate with the Planning and Zoning Department to determine the appropriate location to terminate the dune walkover. There's a few instances in some neighborhoods down there where the lots stop short of where the dune vegetative line is, and so our current requirements say you have to go 10 feet beyond that vegetative line. And obviously, we can't force people to leave their property and go on someone else's property to do it. So we're giving a way to work with staff to figure out how to best handle those situations. Wetland buffers, I mentioned earlier about the definition of interdunal swells. That's predominantly what we're talking about here. Currently, the way it's written, everything falls within the 30-foot buffer like every other wetland. Well, the interdunal swells are a very unique type of wetland on Fort Morgan. As I mentioned, they're not even jurisdictional by the Corps of Engineers, so they're only by the ADEM. So what we're saying now is we're going to reduce that natural buffer on interdunal swells only to 10 feet. And again, this is really driven, there's been a lot of variances coming before the Board of Adjustments for this. We have these smaller lots that really have no way of building a house on without a variance. And so my saying is always when we see repeated variances over and over again, it means something's wrong with our regulation, we need to address it, and that's what we're doing here. But in addition, we put in there that filling of the interdunal swells shall be avoided to the greatest extent possible. If filling portions of the interdunal swells are necessary, the county engineer, planning director, or designee may require an engineer's stormwater report. Comparable or equivalent stormwater storage may be required on site to offset the stormwater volume lost. So as I mentioned in the work session, the primary function of these interdunal swells is really storing of stormwater. As that water table goes up and down, it's really there to hold that volume. And so that's really the primary benefit of what we need to protect, is making sure we're not filling all these things in and not allowing space for stormwater to go. And what this does, it says it basically gets people to minimize the amount of fill of the swell, and if they have to fill it, then they have to offset that storage somehow on site. Pervious surfaces are encouraged to be used at ground level within 30 feet. Again, this is trying to let as much of that water get down in the ground and not impact that swell from a stormwater standpoint as much as possible. And the last thing is all other wetland and stream protection requirements of section 10.4 shall still apply. So this is just some special provisions just in Planning District 25 that will deviate from the normal wetland protection overlay district. In Planning District 26, which is the Point Clear area, we've been working with some members of the POA board for several months on revising some of their local provisions, specifically about PRDs. They've come to us saying that they would be willing to allow PRDs under if it met certain circumstances, because right now it's completely prohibited in Planning District 26. So we work with them to craft this language that meet the requirements. And so basically it has to, PRDs would be allowed in PD 26 as long as they occupy a minimum of 250 contiguous acres. So they must be a large-scale PRD to exist in Planning District 26. Additionally, the open space requirements would be increased from the standard 20% up to 50% of the gross land area. And so half of the PRD would have to be set aside as common space and protected space. And they should be set aside for permanent open space for recreational purposes and for conserving natural resources and sensitive areas of the site. Of that 50% of open space is required, half of it must include active and or passive outdoor recreational uses such as equestrian facilities, golf courses, country clubs, parks, pedestrian walkways, and recreational facilities. So again, they're saying kind of looking at the character of Planning District 26, what should be included in PRDs that fits the character of that community. And there's some of the outdoor recreational uses that are common out there. Moving on to Article 3, the Section 3.2, which is the RA Rural Agricultural District. So what we want to do here is permit exemptions for agricultural uses in agricultural buildings from certain planning and zoning permits. So if you have an agricultural use or building an agricultural building, how we've defined it now that I mentioned earlier, within the RA zoning district, you shall be exempt from zoning site plan and zoning land disturbance permit requirements. So in essence, what that means is if you're farming, you're being a farm, then you don't really have to come to us for any P and Z permits. Like you can, you still have to get building permits and other things like that, but if you're operating a farm, we don't want to interfere with your farming operations. Section 3.4, the BCZ district, there were a couple of items in there that were that had some contradictions to the state law. It had two things in there that were expressly disallowed. One was occupancy of a recreational vehicle as a dwelling other than accessory dwelling to a standard single-family residence, which what that means is if you to have an RV as an accessory dwelling, you have to have a stick-built or some other traditional style, standard single-family residence. We already disallow RVs to be on a lot by itself anyway, so that's never going to happen in any zoning district. And the second thing, it said occupancy of a manufactured home as an accessory dwelling when the primary dwelling is also a manufactured home. The issue this creates is Code of Alabama 45-2-261-16 states that the Baldwin County Planning and Zoning Commission shall have no jurisdiction of the type of single-family house or dwelling to be placed or constructed on private property. So what that means is that if it's a single-family dwelling, if it's a manufactured home or a stick-built home or whatever, we can't differentiate between that. If it's a single-family dwelling, it's a single-family dwelling. So those created some issues with some conflicts with the state law. So we just removed those to clean that up. And as I mentioned earlier, RVs are already disallowed to be occupied as a dwelling if there's no primary structure. So that's that's still in place.
Jay, don't we allow the occupancy of an RV if there's an active building permit?
Yes, for I'm trying to remember the time. There's a period of time that's allowed. Like if you're staying in your RV while you're building your house, yeah, we do allow that for a period of time. Yeah. Article 4, so residential zoning district, section 4.4, RSF 3. We've talked about this in the work session, but currently we have a little bit of a gap. Our RSF 2 and RSF 3 both currently require 80-foot wide lots. But RSF 2 requires a 15,000 square foot lot and RSF 3 requires a 10,000 square foot lot. So dimensionally, you can't really make an 80-foot wide lot meet a 10,000 square foot standard. So there's really been no use of the RSF 3 district because of this. So we're just kind of filling in a little gap that we've had in our ordinance for a while and making the minimum lot width for RSF 3, reducing it from 80 feet to 70 feet. So that's kind of the general review of some of the more straightforward things.
Jay, this may be a
yes, sir.
good time for me to, it's what was right at the beginning of what you started in the definitions when it was defining agriculture. We haven't had this much, but it came up in one of our cases on the lower end of the county. Do we need to make sure aquaculture is included in that? Where we had one hang or something down there with an oyster farm or something. So does it just if that needs to be included in the definition of agriculture?
It is included, and I know the case you're talking about, and that was more about the definition of structure fixed that situation. Because just a brief explanation. Currently, the way structure is defined, anything that is man-made is a structure. A fence post is a structure. And that's not the appropriate use from a zoning perspective about what a structure should be. A structure should have a roof and walls. That is a structure. That's the building code definition of a structure. That's the legal definition of a structure. So I know what you're talking about. That would not even be considered a structure anymore. So that would have solved that problem. Yeah. Okay, moving on to planned developments. So we updated we practically rewrote the whole thing. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was in there before that we kept. We had to rearrange it to just make it flow correctly to be clear. But we added a lot of clarification. I mean, today's a good day to hear after what we heard earlier in the meeting. But so one, it wasn't very clear in our current ordinance how the method of the planned district works. So we make sure we made that very clear of how that works. So that means existing zoning classification shall be retained or may be changed to another zoning classification concurrently with the approval of conceptual site plan or final site plan. The plan development then serves as an overlay to the base zoning district, which modifications to the use, intensity, and design and regulations of the base zoning district may be considered as part of the plan development approval to the extent permitted in the article. Plan developments may extend across multiple zoning districts, or if concerned property includes only one zoning designation, it may be divided into multiple zoning districts, which may be approved concurrently with the conceptual or final site plan. So what that means is, just like as we talked about earlier, the procedure for establishing a PRD shall be the same as a zoning map amendment. It goes by the same as a rezoning specified in Article 19. You have to have a pre-application with staff prior to applying to make sure we get everything kind of worked out, what's expected. Large-scale PRDs, which are 250 acres or more, shall follow the requirements of a conceptual site plan, which we'll talk about in a minute. Large-scale PRDs may be developed in phases. Each phase will require a final site plan submittal and approval as specified in section 9.3.5. So small scales, they go straight to the final site plan. This is our current process, so this is nothing new. So small scale PRDs are 3 acres up to 250 acres, and they go straight to final site plan. So the uses, intensity, and design. This is where we really clarify a lot of the things that we kind of get hung up on a lot during our PRD reviews. But permitted uses shall be allowed shall be the uses allowed within the underlying zoning district, except to the extent modified by the approved master plan. What that means is, and it wasn't clearly said before, but the uses, like if it's single family, multifamily, commercial, whatever, can differ from what the underlying zoning district is, so long as they are explicitly spelled out in the PRD plan and explicitly approved by the county commission. So before we didn't our regulations didn't require them to explicitly spell out all the deviations they're having from the underlying zoning district. So that's the second thing that we put in, is that variations to the uses permitted by the underlying zoning district must be explicitly specified in the PRD application and master plan. So we got to know exactly how you're varying from the underlying zoning district, and that needs to be part of the approval process. All provisions concerning maximum density permitted in the underlying zoning district are applicable and shall not be exceeded. Just like we talked about earlier, that's the one thing that cannot be deviated from. Whatever your underlying zoning district density allows, you can't exceed that. You can't ask to exceed that. That is a set number. So when you have mixed-use buildings or mixed-use projects, the gross floor area of the non-residential uses, which, commercial uses, cannot exceed 20% of the total gross floor area of the building. So we don't see a lot of mixed-use buildings in the county, but that's always been in there, and we're kind of keeping that in there in case we ever see it. So the next slide, PRDs should be designed as one or more neighborhoods that are oriented around an activity center or centers, such as village centers or neighborhood centers, designed as a functional and visual focal point of the development. These centers will generally include higher density residential uses, parks, and community center, such as recreational facility, church, school, daycare, et cetera, at a minimum, and may include other uses. PRDs that are within a quarter mile of the existing or planned rural crossroad center, neighborhood center, village center, or urban mixed-use center identified in the master plan may, and like we talked about in the work session, may is a key word there, design the PRD around these centers to fulfill this requirement. And the main purpose of this is what we want is when PRDs are in the general location of these centers identified in the master plan, we want them to design off of those to fulfill that requirement of the master plan. And I got some graphics here to show you in a minute that'll kind of help clarify that. But then also PRDs shall include a range of housing choices to serve the needs and desires of different market segments. That comes up in a lot of the narratives that are submitted to us, and it's not very well proven, but we're going to really require, like, you got to show how you're meeting different market segments to kind of meet some of the housing demands and housing needs. We all know housing affordability is a nationwide problem right now, so PRDs will be a good way to address some of that. Commercial land uses and institutional uses cannot occupy more than 20% of the gross acres of the PRD, because again, mixed-use developments are encouraged, but at the end of the day, these are still predominantly residential developments, and so the commercial uses shouldn't exceed 20% of the area. The commercial land uses shall be located within the activity centers. So if it is a mixed-use development, those uses should be incorporated into the activity center. And then all the open space requirements of Article 17 have to be met with PRDs. And what that does includes 20% minimum open space, half of which has to be activated, which is our current requirements. There's nothing changing with that. But we are better defining what those open spaces mean. So some examples, and these master plans are just some generic master plans from across the country that I found that I thought were good talking points. So they're not anything representing anything in the county. But if you look at this development, there's how it would fit the proposed requirements of a PRD. Obviously, the first thing, they've got a range of housing types which would address different market segments. They do have an activity center that has their amenity center and neighborhood park, so that kind of gives the focal point of the development and kind of something to center the development around. And then beyond that, they have just their general, more passive open space and conservation areas. So when we talk about designing around it, it has to have these activity centers. That's what we mean, what we're talking about with that regulation. Another example, this is one that's kind of more of a mixed use development. And just hypothetically, just say this is near one of our identified nodes in our master plan. What we want them to do, just as we're showing here, is design your more intense uses and use that activity center in the master plan as part of your PRD plan. Work your intensity of design down as you get further away from that. And on these larger developments, you would certainly have a secondary activity center more interior to the development that would be more your amenity center and things like that. So that's kind of when we talk about that within a quarter of a mile thing, that's what we're really talking about, is that don't ignore what the master plan calls for and go create another activity center just down the road. Use that, incorporate that into your design, and then work off of that as you go inward to the development. The last thing as far as kind of design standards is that one thing we've never required before, but as they're talking about their housing types and their market segments, a lot of what planned communities are is also about how the residences and the structures work together and how they orient to the street and the public spaces. So in their narrative and in their design guidelines that they submit, we would encourage them to show with their different product types how they orient on the lot, what their setbacks are, how they orient towards public open spaces, because that's a significant component of any kind of planned development is the architectural side of it, how the structures work together. And so we'd start requiring that to be part of the PRDs. So that's kind of the design standards. Going on to what's required for submittals. So we have some front-end documents that are required for both large and small-scale PRDs, and it's typical stuff. Digital files of the conceptual site plan or final site plan, whichever is appropriate. The biggest thing here is we currently don't require traffic studies at the PRD stage, and we will now require PRDs. So like we heard today, we would be able to have a lot of those answers about traffic impacts and how they're going to be addressed when reviewing the PRD. And I think that's a pretty consistent message we've heard over the last year about PRDs that have been submitted about understanding what the real infrastructure impacts are. Also, we would require wetland delineation by a professional delineator, or in the case of a small-scale PRD, kind of like we saw today, have the core JD or permits in place so we know what's being approved in the master plan can be produced. So for large-scale PRDs, there's really a few different components of it. One would be a page or a set of pages with the proposed land use plan that identifies land uses, housing types, and building types by generalized area. They should include the dimensional requirements, densities, and clearly identify any proposed variations from the underlying zoning. So that's kind of the meat of the land use plan. The second requirement is they have to submit a proposed open space plan that meets the requirements of Article 17. The open space plan shall identify all common areas and open spaces, show proposed uses, i.e. recreation, conservation, park, school, et cetera. So we have to understand what those open spaces are actually being done, because again, PRDs are a master plan that are approved, So we have to get as much detail as possible in those. Proposed circulation plan showing vehicular and pedestrian circulation inside and outside of the proposed development and immediate vicinity. This shows the location of internal major and minor streets with adjacent external street system and connections and typical sections of the proposed streets. The circulation plan also should show the pedestrian, the location and pedestrian circulation, so whatever trails, sidewalk, whatever the bicycle and pedestrian circulation inside and outside the development, they need to show that as part of their circulation plan. They have to show a conceptual utility service plan, which just shows what, where utilities are in the area, a statement of utility service commitment from the proper providers. For sanitary sewer, they just identify the location of the treatment facility and current capacity. So a lot of the things that we already require now is carrying over to the new regulations. For water, same thing, statement that shall include the location, type, size of water distribution system in the vicinity and current flow and pressure of said water system. And any kind of utility commitments should also make reference to if there are any required upgrades, they need to identify that what they have to do to properly serve the development. We get, just like we do now, we would get a letter from the fire chief or the fire district saying that they can serve the development and not negatively impact the ISA rating. A phasing plan would need to be submitted, as well as a concept plan written summary. And that written summary is basically a narrative that generally describes the entire project, a statement of the present ownership and legal description of the property, proposed land uses and development standards, density, height, yard requirements, typical lot configurations, and proposed restrictive covenants. So the proposed land use and development standards shall clearly identify any proposed variations from the required underlying zoning district. So this document is really what becomes very binding as far as the PRD and what is allowed or not allowed inside the PRD. Need to provide a table showing the maximum number of units and type of units in each phase, statement regarding proposed dedication or reservation of land for public uses, statement regarding the general method of stormwater that will be used, and what type of legal instrument will be created to provide management of common areas, the proposed parking schedule, and a statement regarding any kind of environmental permits that are expected to be needed in the development. So that's what's required for the large scale PRD. The small scale PRD is very similar, just a lot more detail. So same thing with land use plan that identifies land uses, housing type, building types. Really, I'm not going to go through all these again. The difference here is they have to go through a lot more detail as far as showing the actual jurisdictional wetlands and the required buffers, the location of dams, existing stormwater management areas and water impoundment areas, the location of existing streets, buildings, water courses, railroads, transmission lines, and anything within 100 feet, location, grouping, and distance of and height of all uses and facilities, number of residential units, in any area adjacent within 100 feet that is subject to inundation by the base flood, or any areas that are identified in the FEMA maps as flood zones. The site data table should be included that shows the total acres of the site, smallest lot size, number of total lots, linear feet of street, amount of impervious surface, density, all those things. So in essence, if you have the large scale is more of a generalized plan, the small scale is a lot more detail, starts looking a lot more like a subdivision plat as far as the amount of detail that is shown in there. The proposed open space plan, just like the large scale PRD, has to be provided. Same thing with the circulation plan, just with a little bit more detail. And then a final utility service plan shall be submitted that includes the location of everything and of the required utilities. The second bullet there is really a mirror of what we require for preliminary plats. So when you get to a small scale PRD or a final site plan, you're from a utility perspective, you're providing the same information you're providing for a final plat to make sure that we can adequately serve the proposed development. A stormwater management plan shall be submitted that includes schematic diagram of the proposed stormwater collection system, method of retention, detention, and stormwater narrative. And then the final written summary is very similar to the conceptual one. The only real difference there is that at the final site plan requirement, you would actually have to have a copy of your core permit or any kind of environmental permit, or at a minimum, a copy of the application you have submitted for permitting, so we know that what you're doing can be permitted. So that's, I know that was fast, but that was a lot to go through with PRD. Any questions on any of that?
One, and maybe you went by it so fast I didn't see it, but is there something in there about, because Mr. Davis asked the question on this one tonight, and I think it's a good question, phasing plan?
Yes, I'm sorry. So the preliminary and final, the conceptual and final site plan would require a phasing plan. So what we want to see is a phasing plan, but what that shows what the phases are going to be, but also a phasing schedule. So, because that's important too, because sometimes these large scale PRDs, they take more than a couple of years. They often, almost always, take more than a couple of years to develop out. So we want to know this phase will be complete by this year, this phase will be this year. So we want to know kind of a build-out schedule of what that's going to be, and that'll be binding.
Will it include distribution of open space in those phases also?
Yeah, so Article 17 says it has to be distributed, each phase basically has to meet the requirement on its own. Yeah, that's right.
Will that get us out of some of these extensions on these bigger developments as they have to come back? I mean, if we know we're doing phase 1 this year and phase 2 next year and phase 3 in year 3, will it not trigger those extensions until it's supposed to be done?
It would if they do the PRD's route. Now, even with the PRD, they still have to come in for their preliminary plat approval behind the PRD, right? So what it should do is set up an overall build-out schedule for the overall PRD, and then each phase can just come in with their preliminary plat within the prescribed time period of the PRD, and that would solve a lot of that issue.
And another question, and it was toward the front when you were talking about PRDs with I guess it'll cause them to be do these traffic studies before the PRDs are submitted. What are our, I know Mr. Waters has brought forward before, there's different levels of traffic engineering. I mean, just making sure that our traffic studies are to the grade and level that we want. I mean, detailed by people that really know what our impacts on this traffic is going to be.
Yeah, and
I mean, I saw the language in there, and it was fast, and it just, we'll just make sure that that's correct.
Yeah, and I think I copied but yeah, here you go. Traffic study, approved scope of work by the plan director, county engineer, or designee, performed by a qualified professional engineer licensed in the state of Alabama with sufficient traffic engineering experience and pre-approved by the county engineer. That's what we put in the subdivision regulations to address Mr. Waters' comments, and I think that's a good way of handling it. So, because we can't, sole source and tell them there's only certain firms they can use, but we can make sure that who is being used has the experience. If they bring them to us and say, hey, this is their experience and their history with traffic studies, and we approve the scope, we can kind of make sure that we're getting accurate impact studies.
Is there a minimum percent growth that we can require in that traffic study? I know that comes up a lot. When you look at a traffic study and look at the percentage that they include for projected growth, and it varies, and it's always seemed to be an argument.
So, yes, and you're right, because that usually is what kind of causes the biggest concern when it comes to traffic impact studies. So Baldwin County is very unique in this. So we have some areas of the county that, the typical way of doing it, they use the state growth average, right? Well, the state growth average for Alabama is not appropriate for, the Eastern Shore area or South Baldwin County. Our rate of growth traffic growth is much higher than the state average in those areas. So we purposely don't put a specific growth rate in our regulations, because how we have to look at Eastern Shore and South Baldwin is much different than how we have to look at North Baldwin or Northeast Baldwin, because the traffic growth rates even within the county are drastically different. So the way we worded that gives the county engineer and myself the ability to look at where the project is located, what is actually going on there from a traffic growth rate, and work that into the required scope of the traffic study. So what we do, we basically deal with that on an individual case basis. So wherever the project is, whatever's going on there, we say, hey, in this area, you have to use this growth rate because of what's going on in the area.
When I was looking over this before the meeting, I read something about complete streets. Is this the section?
Yes, what it said, I didn't put it in my presentation, I'm sorry, but what I said in the regulation was, it is encouraged, the circulation plan is encouraged to use complete street methodology within the development. So what we would want to see is, depending on the street hierarchy inside the development,
right,
the appropriate pedestrian and bicycle facilities developed in this. So that's part of our review criteria when we start looking through that, is what should be included in a complete street design.
Okay, thank you.
Back to the phasing, like tonight. Phase 1 was all the 60-foot lots. Is there a way to prevent that?
I mean, with the PRDs, we can, part of our review and part of the review process is we can, work with the developer to establish the phasing lines where it's something that, has a mix of product types or whatever. There's, so that's certainly on the table as part of our review process, yeah.
Because what I'm thinking is they do phase 1, get their 60-foot lots, and then phase 2, 3, and 4 never come to fruition, so.
Yeah, I mean, so that's.
And somebody else
buys
buys it and does.
That's certainly, we certainly have the ability to work with them to determine what the phase lines should be, yeah. Anything else before I move on from that? Okay. Sorry, let me get back to my slide here. Okay, section 10.4, the wetland and stream overlay district. As I mentioned in the work session, we had a couple different things that have come up recently that we had to really address to clean up. One was how we define the wetland and stream protection boundary. So what we did is really clarify that the generalized wetland map, that's our GIS layer that you can see on our online mapping thing, that's just to let owners know, like, hey, if you're in the vicinity of this generalized wetland layer, you need to go talk to the Corps. Because again, the Corps and their JD is the only thing that officially determines that yes, that is within the overlay district. Now, but what we also clarified is that it's the landowner, we want to make sure it's very clear that it's the landowner's responsibility to provide documentation of the Corps JD of the boundary and documentation that proposed use is exempted, or documentation that the proposed use is exempted from section 404 regulations in accordance with 33 CFR. What that means is that, they want to, we're not going to tell them, what the Corps is going to consider jurisdictional or not. It's like, you need to go talk to the Corps, you need to get their blessing. Now, if it has been determined by the Corps to be non-jurisdictional, and they provide that documentation, or if the proposed use has been documented as an exempted use to 404 regulations, then that property is not within the boundary of this protection district, because that's clarified that, hey, it's not a jurisdictional wetland, it's not, so it does not fall within our boundary. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that sometimes the Corps takes a lot of time to get through JDs and things like that. So if it's a property owner that's really not having really any impact, and they don't want to wait for the Corps to give them a JD, we can accept their professional wetland delineators delineation and say, if you're accepting that this would be jurisdictional by the Corps, we'll acknowledge that it's jurisdictional by the Corps, but that's more of a voluntary basis of like, hey, we're not going to let the Corps, we're just going to accept that our wetland delineators delineation is accurate, and we're going to say it's jurisdictional and move on. So we did continue to give a path forward to not have to wait on the Corps, because we fully understand how much time it takes them to process things. But if there's ever a discrepancy or dispute about what the jurisdictional boundary is, it's going to go back to the Corps. Like we're not going to determine what is or is not. So if anyone ever disputes it, we're just going to say, okay, you got to go to the Corps then. So that really clears up how we define the boundary, because that caused a lot of issues with some things in the past. The second thing, we just want to clarify that permit requirements that, we do require the 30-foot natural buffer, which we already require. We just redefined it to natural buffer versus non-disturbed setback. But we just want to clarify too that a JD or if approved by the planning director or designee, professional wetland delineator's delineation shall be required before issuing any permit, development permit. So that wasn't very clear before, that, hey, before you get any development permit, you either got to get a JD or we got to say we accept your professional wetland delineator's delineation. So that was really just some clarification there. The final thing with this was the exemptions. One, we want to just clarify that any fill or buffer encroachment that's authorized by a Corps of Engineer nationwide 18 permit would be exempt. Those are very minor, low impact things, and that's usually what a single family, if they have old lot of record, that's usually what they're having to do to get their building permit. So the second thing was a minimum wetland fill or wetland 30-foot natural buffer encroachment for access of lot where no other access from public road is available. So basically you don't have to go through a variance to cross a wetland to get to your buildable space. Like, we have to give you access to your lot. Now, of course, you got to get your core permits and ADEM permits, but we would make you get a variance for that. Fill or encroachment into the 30-foot natural buffer necessary to create a maximum of 1/10 of an acre of buildable uplands. This is actually already in there. What we want to do is clarify that you don't have to get a variance if you're minimizing your encroachments to the buffer and you're just trying to create your 1/10 of an acre buildable lot, which is a standard practice across all agencies. You don't have to get a variance for that. Marine accessory uses, so these are bulkheads, piers, things like that. They can be within the buffer. That doesn't have to get any kind of variance. And then finally, agricultural uses, as we talked about, with that new definition, they would be, which that's already in there. Just the definition of agricultural use was problematic, so we cleaned that up with a definition correction. So finally, the natural buffer area just clarified that for major projects, so this is talking about subdivisions or commercial sites, you can clear the natural buffer area as long as you don't remove anything 6 inches of diameter or greater. And you got to do it by hand clearing, mechanical clearing, as long as you're not disturbing anything. You can add native plant species in the 30-foot wetland buffer as long as you're not disturbing. The only disturbance you have is associated with the planting. For minor projects, so this is single family and duplex lots, to meet the site's yard requirements, encroachment into the 30-foot natural buffer is allowed where all efforts to minimize the impacts to the 30-foot natural buffer have been demonstrated in a detailed site plan. And the second part of that is the variance shall not be required for 25% yard encroachment that results in 25% greater reduction in jurisdictional wetland fill. So what we run into a lot of times is that they either got to get a variance for a building setback or a variance from the natural buffer setback. But if we could have a little bit of room to work with them within 25% of impacts, we can make it fit and not have to go to the Board of Adjustments when they're going to get a variance either way because they have hardship. So we're just trying to give us a little bit of working room to how we deal with those two setbacks. That's it for the overlay district. Any questions before I go on to the last piece? All good? So finally, the section 19.5, which is the zoning amendment process. The first piece is a staff review for zoning map amendments. What we're doing is adding in some time periods within our ordinance that we have to produce staff reports and hold public hearings. So the first piece is within 45 days of a correctly completed application, the planning director shall deliver to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the County Commission a written report summarizing the facts of the case. And within 60 days of a correctly completed application, the County Commission shall hold a public hearing for the case. All submittal dates and meeting dates shall be in accordance with the schedule. So what we're saying is, like, we're not going to start scheduling special meetings. We're going to make our schedules work within those timeframes. So the second part is the factors of reviewing proposed zoning. So earlier you heard me go through the 11 criteria we currently have. There's a lot of duplicates in there and some confusing language of how it's worded currently. So we've revamped that to these 5 or 6 criteria here, which is the first one is degree of compatibility with existing allowable uses in the vicinity. So when we look at that, when you look at a rezoning application, what's going on in the area, what the current uses are, what are the allowable uses in the zoning around it, so how compatible is it with that? The second one is degree of conformity to the proposed rezoning to the master plan. We have this worded differently in there now, and I'll show you why it's changed to degree of conformity. We have a way of, with a scorecard tool, of kind of giving a better accurate answer about how, because nothing's ever going to completely conform or completely not conform. It's going to be some degree of conformity. The proximity of the proposed rezoning to existing transportation network and utility infrastructure. So again, this is, where is this at? Is this an area that's prepared for development? Does it have the proper street network in the area? Does it have proper utilities in the area? Like, can it be reasonably developed? Timing of the request and development trends in the area, that's one we already have. Impacts to the environmental conditions of the vicinity or resources of the county, we already have that one as well. And finally, impacts to the health, safety, and welfare of the county and the vicinity. So really, we kept 3 pretty much worded exactly like they are, reworded 3 to be more appropriate to what we're dealing with on a regular basis, and kind of clarified what that means. But when it talks about degree of conformity, and we're still working through, this is just a staff review tool. What it is, it's a scorecard, and this came out of the master planning process a couple of years ago. But basically, there's 4 different categories that you review by land use. So where's the location, what is the proposed land use, and you score it, anything from +2 to -2. How is it, fit the land use of the area? Environment, compatible with the site environmental conditions, same thing, looking at the environmental conditions, does it support the rezoning or not support, anything from a +2 to a -2. Connectivity, access to connectivity to the site. So again, this is evaluating how it relates to the surrounding transportation network. And then finally, the character, does it fit the character of the location? And so what you end up with is the total score, and these score numbers are not accurate, this is just an example. But it would fall into one of 4 categories. It either strongly supports the rezoning, somewhat supports the rezoning, does not support the rezoning, or strongly does not support. So we talk degree of conformity, that's going to be in one of those categories, and that gives us a much better tool to work with as far as how it conforms to the master plan versus our current way of just saying, does it better conform? That's very open and subjective, and it's not a good way of judging that. So this is a better way of judging that. So public notice and public hearings. So what we did here was just separated zoning text amendments, which is what we're going through right now, is a zoning text amendment, and rezonings. So for zoning text amendments, they shall be submitted to the Planning Commission for consideration and recommendation to the County Commission. Planning Commission shall hold a public hearing before making the recommendation, and then the County Commission shall hold a public hearing in accordance with Code of Alabama prior to this acting. So this is pretty much our current process for zoning text amendments. But what we're proposing is to break out rezonings and say zoning map amendments would be submitted directly to the County Commission, which will hold a public hearing and act on the proposed amendment in accordance with this ordinance and Code of Alabama within 60 days of a completely completed application. So all the meeting dates and submittal dates will be by the adopted calendars, so we won't be creating any special meetings for this. Rezoning staff reports will be sent to the Planning Commission members so that the Planning Commission members can provide comments and recommendations to the County Commission prior to or during the public hearing. Then once the County Commission takes action, the Planning Commission will get notice of action so they know how that zoning ordinance is being carried out by the County Commission. So what this really does, if you look at the state law, our local law, this aligns the duties of the Planning Commission and the County Commission better with state law, because the duties of the Planning Commission is to develop the master plan and make recommendations of the master plan to the County Commission for adoption, and to develop the zoning ordinance and regulations and make recommendations to the County Commission for adoption. And then the County Commission has chosen to authorize the Planning Commission to handle all subdivision cases. So that's how, the subdivisions are by state law a factor of the County Commission, but they have the ability to designate that duty to you all, which is how we currently operate and will continue to operate. So the amendments to the public notice and public hearing process really just better aligns with what the Code of Alabama designates for each board. And that's enough of me talking, so I'd be glad to answer any questions. That's all I can say tonight.
All right. I guess first off, any questions for Jay?
Is this an up or down, vote on this, or do we have the ability to make changes?
So you can, it's all recommendation to the county commission. So if you wanted to, as part of your recommendation, recommend, as part of your motion, any changes, you certainly have the ability to do that. It's just a recommendation from you all.
In the work study session, did we discuss about bringing the rezoning request back to us? Is that going to be changed?
So the way it's published and advertised is the way it's presented right now. But you have the ability, if you wanted to make that as part of your recommendation for county commission to consider, you could certainly put that as part of your recommendation. Yeah.
So like if you wanted to do that, you would make a motion to approve the zoning text as submitted with these following changes or additions or caveats or whatever you're suggesting, and then vote on it that way.
I think, everything, I want to say sounded good until we get to this very last part, what we're looking at here on the screen where, if we have where it takes these rezonings out of, in the front of this group, and, I don't know if we just, remove this last portion that, I think the general consensus, from work session was that we'd like for that to come before us as has been, as, our voice to our citizens. And, that's, I think what, Mr. Waters' concern is, and, I think that we, as a group, would like to continue to have these rezoning cases come before this group.
The citizens agree like that too. The citizens would like to be able to come to these meetings too. Just, I know it's not my thing to say, but somebody's got to say it.
All right. Anybody?
Where else is this being done, Jay? Yeah, give us another example of maybe another county that this is happening.
So, there's only, I think, 5 counties in the state that has zoning, because that's done by local legislation. I can't speak to how all their processes are, but I know that I've been told that our current process is not consistent with what some of the other counties do. They just, because the legislature is pretty clear that that's why you all make recommendations, and that's because it's a duty of the county commission to pass.
But you got to look at how I'm sorry to interrupt, but this isn't a normal county. We're growing at what somebody says the fastest in the state or one of the fastest in the nation. I hate to say, but I don't want to use the term we, but people have worked hard to get these districts zoned to give them some protection from being unzoned. When they're unzoned or whatever, somebody gets to say, well, we think it's good enough, or, we have lost we've lost our right, almost our right as a citizen to have an input in our community. To go, one of our planning commissioners, said that, the times at what our county commission meets isn't conducive to a working man. There was one concern, and at least we're a group of, we're a short group tonight, but we're typically a group of about 8 to 10 or 12. And can, more ears or more eyes or more, more voices is better, and consolidating this to a smaller group, it's taken a taking some loop out of the community that like I say, people have worked hard to ensure that it's a protective measure for us.
Jay, I know state law has different guidelines for county versus cities, but we mirror the cities a lot in that the county commission is like the mayor and council, and the planning commission is like every city has a planning commission. I don't know of I could be wrong, but I don't know of a municipality that does differently than what you do. Every municipality planning commission makes a recommendation to the county, to their mayor and council for zoning. And we've done that here in this county from the time that zoning was started. I just don't see the need to change it. I think it's been a proven process. I think it's better for the citizens, and I think that's who we should be considering. Be honest, I'll be here, but if you take this away, I think you're going to have a harder time finding people that want to sit on the planning commission if all they do is come and have to approve subdivisions, which they're going to have to approve because they meet the regulations. It's almost a de facto. It's almost like, why do we serve then at that point? And I think you're going to have people say, well, why am I giving my time up to sit up here and all I'm doing is approving a subdivision that I can't do anything about anyway? So I don't know. My opinion is we ought to leave it like it is, but if it's out of our hands, if the county commissioners want to do it and they change it, we can make.
And you're right, all the cities do it the same way we do it, and we kind of mirror those processes. Cities are a different animal. They have home rule. They can make their own ordinances about their procedures. They don't have to be influenced as much by the state law. We only get the powers that the legislature gives us. That's just the nature of how county government works in Alabama. But
I'm just thinking procedurally. Procedurally, I think there's an element that's necessary for having a body make a recommendation to the county commission. Nothing against the county commission, but you've got several people sitting on this planning commission that are lifers in planning, that you're just going to take that element away. They have no input. I hear what you're saying here, that you're going to send a notice to us and we have the right to make comments but I don't think it's the same. I almost, in fact, I put down why. If you don't want us to have a public hearing, at that point, I don't even need you to send me anything because I'm not sure the voice is being heard at that point.
So, and the public hearing part of it, and that's another clarification that I didn't really touch on, but so our ordinance, our current ordinance says planning commission holds a public hearing and then county commission holds a public hearing. But the state law says, this is what causes some confusion with citizens and different things, is that as far as advertisement and notification requirements, the advertising requirements and public hearing requirements by state law are built around the county commission public hearing. So that's one of the things that's caused a little bit of confusion with the two different public hearings. And it's kind of.
Why don't you advertise for both public hearings? We have a public hearing for a case that's here, and then, hey, we're going to recommend for approval or recommend for denial. Hey, if you don't like how it was, there's another one. I think that's the confusion because we have two meetings and one notice.
Well, we do. So the certified letters go out for the planning commission meeting, and then the advertisement in the paper and the sign and all that stuff that's required by state law goes out before the county commission meeting. Because that's just the way it's currently written.
Maybe that needs a revision, that where we send out, it ought to, the sign that goes up on the property ought to go out, let's say, X number of days before this planning commission meeting, and, you're really advertising for two meetings. One is, for this one, and then, hey, county commission meets in, 2 or 3 weeks after this.
Right. And because I can just tell you one of the things that we're seeing is that, we do get a large turnout here most times. I'm sure it's probably because of the meeting schedule. But, it's just a recommendation, and then it goes to county commission, and, people either do show up or don't show up. But when they don't show up and the county commission takes action, whether it's, for or against whatever, people get upset, like, I thought it was denied. What happened? It was like, well, that was just a recommendation. So it's caused a little bit of confusion with that.
You could clarify that in your thing, in your introduction in the front, you know, on rezoning cases. I mean, you could tell them, I mean, our county commissioners are going to meet on March the 21st at 10 a.m. if you want to go, you know, share a voice again. But I mean, you know, you could tell them this is not final. What on rezoning, it's a recommendation, and go ahead and give them the date then.
Yeah.
I mean, I think.
Well, I can tell you too, the
I think
meeting
it's a communication.
Yeah,
It's a
and
communication lapse that's our problem.
I can tell you the meeting time discussion, we had a case not too long ago at County Commission that it was a full house. So, you know, when it's, you know, when it's a contentious item, they show up at County Commission.
I just think that our having it is a valuable tool for the commissioners, because whether we agree or disagree, it lets the commissioners know what happened at, you know, at the meeting here. And I mean, I've heard one of the commissioners at one of the commissioners' meeting on a rezoning case that they wish they had known what the main outcry was from the public, you know, because we denied something that was recommended for approval, and they just, because we rejected it, they were just curious as to what the main concern was.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a valuable tool for them.
Yeah, I would just, it sounds like it's a pretty unified, I would just, you know, put these comments in your motion and it's in the minutes and send it forward that way.
All right, I don't want to cut this off from our discussion, but we have several people that did sign up. So let's do this. Let's call up those that, if they're still here, didn't give up on us. There were 3 that I had signed up for this portion of our meeting, so I'm going to call on you if you want to come up and speak. Ben Gould? Yes, sir. Come on up. You didn't think you was ever going to get up here, did you?
I'm a patient man.
Good.
Comes with age. Well, TA 25-01, it's a 350-plus page document, and I'm gonna need 5 minutes because I'm speaking for a group, and I'm gonna comment on every. No, just kidding. Just kidding. It's getting late. Basically, I'm going to talk about the Randall property, which I hope y'all remember that they talked about that for a couple minutes. Okay. First of all, I want to thank Celine and Mr. Thetford for RSF2. I know you thought I was going to say bad things, didn't you? Anyway, I think RSF2 is totally appropriate. Our areas RSF-E, RSF1, RSF2. RSF2 is 15,000 square foot lots. I've sat here since it started, hearing about 50-foot wide lots, 400 houses. That's crazy. RSF2 and 15,000 square foot lots is a gift. Okay, so thanks. However, that's assuming what actually gets built.
That's right.
Because, you know, people can.
They could submit a PRD here just like this other.
Right.
PRD, so.
Who knows what's going to be built? And also, people can ask
here.
things to be rezoned, right? So it ain't over till it's all built.
That's correct.
Oh, that's right. So can you bring up a document for me, Celine? Can I call you by your first name?
That's fine.
I feel like I know you now. It's a Microsoft Word document. Yeah, go down. I have a question, I guess, for Mr. Dixon, because I'm supposed to address him, right? That's what the rules were.
You address us.
You?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Go down to the.
He's listening, though. Go ahead.
First page.
First page? Okay.
Yeah. I just said one question. Go up a little bit. I'm sorry, down. Down. The other up, right there. Okay. Is the Baldwin County Planning and Zoning Commission asking the Baldwin County Commission to just approve this verbiage, or asking them to approve TA 25-01 in its entirety? Okay.
It's TA 2501 in its entirety. So
Okay, which includes the Randall property, correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. Next part. Okay, part of TA 25-01 in its entirety has this wording. Again, I'm all for RSF 2, and I hope it ends up in that, because heck, our POA will help the developer. I mean, we're all for it. But it says the subject property falls within a mid-density development potential area and is within the vicinity of an urban mixed-use center. The mid-density development area supports residential zoning from RSF3 to RTF6 and also professional business and neighborhood business districts. Now, if this entire 350-plus page thing is voted, you accept it. Does that mean you accept the assumption that it's okay to build professional business and neighborhood business district businesses there?
No, that would require a different rezoning. What that statement is saying is that stating what the master plan calls for that area.
Okay, and so why is that even in there when we're just talking about
Because
RSF2?
it's part of our staff analysis. What we're stating there is that the RSF2 that's in the amendment is less intense than what the master plan would allow.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Of course, you all do the master plan. It's all subjective. Everything is with this, all the whole planning and zoning thing. It's all subjective. So by putting this up to a vote, no one is agreeing that it's set in stone that that is a B2 district.
No, it is being rezoned to RSF2.
Right.
Anything beyond that would have to go through a whole other process like that's been going on.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
All right, well, I thank you for your time, and I hope that RSF2 is actually built there.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Matt Kilgore? Gone? Joseph Thetford?
I represent Robert Riedel, but I don't have anything to add.
Okay. All right, that's all I had signed up. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing, and then now we can come back to our discussion. So, not to belabor this, but I think Aaron probably said it the best. We're going to make a motion to recommend this to the county commission. If you've got any changes, additions, or deletions that you want to recommend, then you need to include that in your motion. So is there any other discussion about what we need, in fact, of what you would like to include that's not there or something to change?
I would recommend removing that last section that takes away the rezoning cases from this Planning and Zoning Commission body here.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
I would like additional parking for single-family residential. And maybe it's just 3.
So you're saying amend the parking schedule for single-family duplex from 2 to 3? So right
Not
now,
duplexes.
the single-family duplex are the same category of parking.
Pardon?
Single-family and duplex are the same category.
Okay, yes.
So it's currently 2, you want to make it 3.
But I think removing the last section or not recommending approval of the last section is more critical than parking.
Well, whatever we recommend to the county commission, they're going to turn around and they'll decide what elements of that they will agree with. And I'm assuming they could approve and disregard our recommended changes on any level. I guess they could pick and choose even from that. They may agree with us on one and may say on the other, no. They may not agree with your parking, for instance, may agree to the other. Right, Jay?
That's correct.
Okay.
What we would do is, we'll be presented with the minutes and the recommendation from the planning commission, and they'll take it from there.
And I guess, Jay, do we need to make a motion for each change that someone may have so that we know if that is a recommendation or not? Like you would make a vote on the parking spaces.
I think we can include it just in one motion, don't you?
But what if what if the majority doesn't agree with the parking spaces, but they do agree with the?
Tell me that's why I said that.
And I don't know, y'all may all have
No,
5 different things,
You
so
got-
it may end up being some things that some people agree with and not.
Yeah. So you either openly discuss it now and tell Diane you don't like it, or you do like it, or we then divide it up.
Yeah, that's, Commissioner, Chairman, that's how I would say if y'all could come to a consensus and just have it in one motion, just because it's a recommendation, so it's not.
That's true.
Yeah, so it's,
All right, any thoughts on I'm gonna pick the parking first, because Diane's thrown, that's the only one other than the last item. Anybody got any thoughts on the parking, one way or the other?
I'm gonna agree with Diane.
All right. If you disagree, I guess that's the thing to say now, is whether you disagree.
I don't have a problem.
All right? Nobody else says anything, we're going to go with that. All right, then let's deal with the zoning issue as far as the process procedurally on zoning. Does everybody want to remove the line about county commission doing it only and rather keep it the existing process?
so
Okay.
just to be clear, it's the section regarding public notices and public hearings. So what I'm hearing, I'm just trying to clarify, make sure I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, is that you would want to leave the section for public notices and public hearing as currently adopted, and not change it.
Yes.
I think so.
Okay. Because the reason I clarify that, because there's other things in Article 19 that y'all are okay with. I didn't want to, I want to make sure it's just that specific section.
Yeah, I would say as the rezoning process, like you just said, as currently codified in the ordinance.
There's a line item there I'd like to leave in there, the notice of action to be sent to the planning commission. You could just say planning commission for rezoning actions taken by the county. We've been asking for that. And we haven't got it.
Can you put that last slide up on the board?
I would always like to know what the county commission's action is, but
So you're talking about that very last bullet that says notice of action will be sent to planning commission members for rezoning actions taken by county commission?
Yes.
So again, I'm trying to just make sure we're clear. So we'd essentially just add that note
Right.
to the current language. Okay. Yeah, I'm clear what you're talking about.
all right. Is there any other item to contend with? All right, let's try to frame a motion then for this, and who wants to be well, I'm glad I'm chairman and I don't have to make the motions.
I'll give it a shot.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we recommend to the county commission the approval of case number TA 2501 with the, I should have wrote it down. Recommend approval of case 2501 with the deletion, or with the, help me out, Aaron.
Just say with the following changes.
With the following changes. With the following changes. The current rezoning process as codified in the current ordinance will remain the same. And notice of action by the county commission will be submitted to the planning commission regarding rezoning cases.
Just one clarification.
Sure.
You say rezoning process. You mean the public notice and public hearing?
Public
process.
notice and public,
Okay.
yes,
By the Baldwin County Planning and Zoning.
by the Baldwin County Planning and Zoning Commission.
And parking.
And we had, and also the addition to the parking schedule of 3 parking spots per single-family dwelling. Is that- And duplexes.
All right. That motion, you got that, Brenda? You know? I bet you do. All right, so we have a motion by Greg Seibert to approve TA 25-0, or to recommend to the county commission to approve TA 25-01 with the stated revisions or additions. Do you have a second on the motion?
I'll second it. I'll second it.
Mr. Mullick has seconded the motion. Any questions on the motion by either staff or planning commission? Everybody's just tired and ready to go home, I know. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. All right. Public comments, we do have someone signed up for public comments. Probably know who you are, and I've got to pull it up. Craig Strahler? I'm probably butchered last name. Yeah, I have Cynthia Hagar also. Excuse me?
Sign up online, they don't have that.
Okay, well, come on up. Let me,
And
I'm here to reiterate what Mr.
yeah.
Stallmer
Well, go ahead and give us your case first, and then I can deal with the rest.
Okay, fair enough. My name is Craig Strawler. I reside at Cottages of Ventura. My address, 16814 Fedora Drive. It's a Lenore property. We're finishing out the current and final phase, it's 3C, the development. There are significant issues with the property development in its current form regarding drainage and runoff. It's a problem that's been ongoing. Houses in the community has been flooded and continue to flood. The current construction is only impacting our community where we pose to actually be impregnated almost to the extent now where we're in a flood zone. We're not in a categorized flood zone. It's that bad. Records will reveal people's houses have been flooded, and as it stands right now, there's been deaf ears from the developer, Lennar, to correct the west portion, which is Prado Loop. There's a berm to the rear that they're trying to build an elevation where water runs behind the properties and saturates all those houses all along to the retention pond, and there's an outlet, an inlet, and an outlet that is clogged up. The water doesn't even flow in the normal direction. There's upgrading where new construction is occurring. Water is about a foot away from my back door as it stands right now. This is a case in point with everybody that came in here tonight to express their concerns and opinions regarding current construction, fast construction, without the oversight, apparently, that other people are very concerned about. We're dealing with it, and the issue of Thompson Road out front, there is not even a ditch. It will be completely likely flooded or washed out, along with the retention pond to the sides, or the other side has already started to cave in with the sidewalk. This has been completely ignored again, once again by the developer. So we're here before the commission to try to make our stance that this is taken care of. Secondly, there's a two-story property going on Lot 8. Jason, to me, I'm Lot 33. With Lot 7, the neighbors is a one-story house. That's a two-story salt box roof, pouring right behind, off the roof, into the berm. There's another 20 feet behind them. They're not even bothering to touch that and grade it. properly as it's being done around, and the water's being flushed right into their properties, the neighbors' properties, all along down that road to the detention pond are all being flooded. It backwashes from the top down. It doesn't go with the concurrent form of water flow. It just kind of flows where it wants to, misses the street sewers. So it's going to everybody's properties, the backside of Fedora Drive. Everybody's houses behind there are flooded, and this is going to increase the amount of threshold water that from our torrential downfall, rain and hurricane that, God forbid, is a likely stance here with the strong storms that we receive.
Okay. Right, before you leave, do we know where this is, Selena? I'm completely lost where we're at.
Rawls and Thompson Road.
Cottages of Adventura.
So,
It's adjacent to the city of Robertsdale, and I think it was in Robertsdale's planning jurisdiction, but it was a dual review by the county and Robertsdale's in their ETJ at the time, but they've since withdrawn the boundaries. And I found a partial plat that I just sent to the printer, so I'm going to see if that's ready.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, just a little background. This subdivision was approved when Robertsdale was still exercising their ETJ. So this is all approved through the City of Robertsdale's Planning Commission. We did review for the subdivision requirements. We reviewed this roadway and drainage, and from the emails that I've received, the issues that are going on are really with the lot builder. It's not really the subdivision, it's the lot builder and how they're developing the lots and how they're draining the lots, which is outside of our purview of this development. So they, because again, we have, I believe this phase is still within its bond period for the roadway infrastructure, but it sounds to me like what, and maybe the gentleman can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me what the issues that are happening are from the rear yard going on to adjacent yards, not the roadways. Is that correct?
Well, that would be partially correct and partially incorrect. If you're from a perspective of Rawls Road, it washes out that way. From Thompson Road, now they're building up the elevation from the south to the north, and it's pushing the water straight back down in the community. That's the contentions here. The neighbor next door, in fact, wanted me to submit this. She has a disabled child, couldn't make it tonight. Her email, she expressed her concerns. There's 6 acres to the next of Thompson Road there at Prado Loop. She owns all that, and where the survey markers are in her road, she's already getting washed out. And all the water is going to be pushed over, envelopes over, in addition, onto her property. So it's not being, channeled. I have that copy of that email when you want it.
So there's a couple of things. Like, I know there was, you just mentioned about the 2-story home. We don't have any ability to regulate 1 or 2, like 2-story homes are allowed in this area, and it's the only difference.
Well, I understand it. It's not built yet. Hypothetically, I'm here right now to tell you that is going to wash out the neighboring house, and I think corrective action can be taken to drop it down to a 1-story at least to prevent that from happening. It's oblivious. It's obvious. If you walk there, you would see it. You wouldn't have to be an engineer.
These are all, all these lot grading and all those things are building permit items, and to my knowledge, we don't have any ability to say it can only be a single story. The zoning district allows 2 stories, and as long as they're meeting building code and meeting the lot drainage requirements, that becomes a civil matter between the POA and the builders.
Yeah.
So the question that poses with that is, according to the engineering, the plans that the contractors are following through with, best practices, it's in our opinion that that's not being done properly, but through the Planning Commission. So you don't have any oversight.
We do site inspections to make, because we do each one has a ZSP, and so our building department does building inspections, and when we do site inspections, and we get them to do corrective actions when we see them. But unless they're violating our regulations or going against what their approved drainage plan was. That's kind of our limitation of what we can
I
do.
believe the drainage plans are being violated, and once again, we're inundated and impregnated by water, by storms, and houses have flooded on the record, being known and being rebuilt from the inside, and people have a new build in the new construction side that I'm in, that we're receiving flooding. It's an obvious concern here to address. You may not have oversight. I'd find that hard to believe that you want to tell me it's through the planning and building department, but I go to planning department and they tell me, the planning and building department tell me that I need to come here to the planning commission. So if you're telling me it's a legal civil matter where they're actively engaged in the final phase of construction where it can be fixed, that's senseless. That's no form of government representation at all. Right now, I'm here telling you that there is a problem. There's an ongoing problem that needs to be remediated and addressed.
I have a question. I mean, who on this cottages of Aventura, who would have, I mean, I imagine it's a record that somebody stamped our drainage narrative, and I mean, you know, it's maybe something that somebody to give some follow-up to see if this is being built as it's supposed to or draining as it's supposed to.
And we can certainly, from the subdivision standpoint, go back and look at the record drawings and make sure the subdivision is following the approved drainage plan. But I just want to be clear, there's a little bit of a difference between this subdivision drainage and when we start to talk about lot grading. And not that it affects this because this is already done and platted, but what's being described here is, if you recall, while we added our lot grading requirements into our subdivision regulations, it's to make sure that we have better oversight over these type of things now. This was just done years ago.
Excuse me for interrupting you. The natural resource planner had put her foot down already over the last several weeks to address the concerns on some portions, and has just been advised this week and has come out and done a site inspection. Otherwise, nothing would have been done. And she has made some changes in there, but where I'm particularly speaking in a total sense to the development is the other issues that has not been addressed at all. So this concern is an ongoing concern where they basically construct and leave these problems and let us deal with the end result. And we're hopeful that corrective action can be taken. That's why I'm here tonight to present this.
So
Okay.
That's our process, is when we're doing site inspections during construction, and we make them resolve issues as they come up. And so that's kind of the process we're in right now.
Who does the site inspections?
The planning and zoning department does. Yeah.
Okay, well, they need to finish up with the development in proper form with the issues that have been posed here tonight, and what I just reiterated with the natural resource planner coming out and identifying additional problems. Again, I stress to you, are facing our houses to be flooded. Drainage issues are not corrected. This is a serious matter.
Yeah, obviously there's a problem here, and I don't know if code enforcement needs to go out there or the planning department, but
I do know
somebody's
that-
made a mistake.
I do know that our permit engineer received a message from Mullins Engineering, and that I know that they are discussing the issue.
It's being actively, worked through with the engineer of record, our permit engineer, in a process. So, we're aware of the problem and we're working through to correct it. It just, it's a process.
Why is there no ditch on Thompson Road? On the side of out front of the development, especially with the new construction, there's zero ditch, and the water runoff comes from that back end. It's going to wash out that entire roadway.
We're not going to be able to solve every problem here tonight, but what we can promise you is that we can meet with you on site and take a look at your concerns and work with the developer and work with the engineer of record to solve the problems that they're responsible for.
Thank you so much for telling, from hearing that from your perspective, and take corrective actions. I would greatly appreciate that. and your time here.
Okay.
So listen to me voice the concerns.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Did Ms. Hager, did you have anything else you needed to add? You'll have to come up to the mic if you do.
Can you hear it? Sorry. My name is Cynthia Hager, and I reside at Lot 37 on Fedora Drive, and just a few houses up from where Mr. Strawler resides. But I've been here 2 years, and during that time, when we've had the heavy summer rains, I've had water, even with the lot leveled out before they started construction. There's not proper drainage, I can assure you. I know some of the other neighbors have had flooding inside of their homes. By the grace of God, that has not happened to me yet on the inside. But I fear now, especially, it will be coming. There's just not proper drainage back there. I've gone out and walked in the back to see it. And I am a retired builder and broker. I've built homes for 38 years. When I retired here 2 years ago, I came out, took a look at this, and I thought it might be fine. But then we started experiencing the water issues after I got here. So in the meantime, I was greatly concerned, I still am, I'm greatly concerned, seeing what they're doing with this next phase of the subdivision and construction behind us, because these homes are being built on an 18 to 20 inch elevation where they're grading the dirt, and that's before they pour the foundation. And then by the time they're finished, they're sodding these out, and it's coming down at a slope, but the way it's coming is all toward the back of us on Fedora Drive and then going down his direction. So I have contacted them. I've spoken with people there at the Lennar corporate office, given the brush off, and I've gone down to the community model home to try to get information. Was given the brush off there, and I don't feel like we're being listened to, and everything that Mr. Strawler said, I'd like to reiterate, because he's very accurate at what's going on. I've gone out taking pictures. We've gone out looking at this in great detail, and there's not proper drainage in so many different areas around that aspect. I'm worried for myself, but my neighbors, because as you know, the insurance company is not going to pay for us to have, we can't get the flood insurance, and if, God forbid, it floods, I'm very frightened about this summer, especially, having rains come in, or, I feel like at any moment when that happens, or any other kind of inclement weather, it may cause a serious problem with water coming in. So I don't know what else to do. I mean, I want my name on record that I do, I'm very concerned about it. I would like someone to take it seriously and to please address the issue, to come out and see what they can do to help assist us get someone to address this matter.
Okay. You did the right thing coming tonight, so I think you heard we got somebody that's going to check into it, so you should be hearing from them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. All right. Anything else on that? All right. That's all I had signed up for public hearing. Staff reports.
Nothing more than I've already covered.
Okay. Legal counsel?
No reports.
Okay. Anybody on the planning commission have anything? Oh, right now it's myself, Brandon, and Reed Key have signed up for the master plan, so let's start with that whenever you're ready. And if somebody wants to join in, we'll include them.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think probably what we'll do, like I know that Fort Morgan has a pretty active group that wants to work through a sector plan, so I know some of them would want to be involved in those portions down there.
I'll let you drive the starting, and I can contact the guys, and we'll just set a date, and we'll place, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, we'll look at, I'll get with you on some days, but we'll probably look at maybe the first of,
I think Greg was interested, but it depended a lot on time and place.
Yeah.
So just let me know when. I'll let Greg know in case he can.
Yeah, during the day is tough.
right.
So,
So,
Okay?
but yeah, just to let you know, we'll probably look at, maybe the first, starting to kick something off first of the month. Be probably accurate time for you, but I'll get with you.
Okay. We're adjourned.